vechidiki vakamirira mumhinduro chakabzuva vezera aona wakwiku vechidiki vakamirira rusununguko chakabzuva vezera aona wakwekura vechidiki vakamirira mumhinduro chakabzuva vezera aona wakweku vechidiki vakamirira rusununguko wenukusita mata gawetu akusikelike bandla zera wenu velu bufuna kungene khaya zera dikutempile ngingayibona inkololeka
From Africa's broadcast capital to the furthest corners of the globe, this is Rise and Shine, every weekday mornings on Channel Africa.
It's 6 o'clock Central Africa time, which means it's time for you to rise and shine. And that's not just an instruction, that's the name of the program as well, right here on Channel Africa Radio, where we bring you the African perspective. My name is Peter Ndoro. Sanda Beda is away today. We're broadcasting as usual from our studios in Johannesburg, South Africa, streaming on the internet, www.channelafrica.co.za. And you can also catch us on your mobile app. Just look for SABC Plus, that's SABC Plus, and then look for Channel Africa, and of course look for Rise and Shine. So we have quite a packed program for you today, lots that we're unpacking, but today, as you know, is World AIDS Day, and this year's commemoration, or theme as it were, is overcoming disruption, transforming the AIDS response. And I think it speaks volumes to some of the challenges that AIDS programs have been facing, particularly after funding was cut so dramatically at the beginning of the year. And also in Nigeria, troops have rescued 12 young women who were abducted from their homes in Borno State by suspected Islamic State fighters this last week. And also we'll be looking at a very strange story, bizarre, I've got to say the least. In Iran, the country there has seized a ship that was flagged from Eswatini carrying 350,000 litres of smuggled fuel. We'll get to the bottom of that story and others after the news, as we say good morning to Onele Nsinsi.
SABC News. The African perspective.
Good morning, Peter, and a very good morning to our listeners. President Cyril Ramaphosa says disinformation amongst groups in the country is fueling the U.S. stance towards South Africa. He says this is undermining South Africa's national security and hampering the government's efforts to create jobs. Ramaphosa has appealed to those who he says have been spreading disinformation about the country to join the country's national dialogue to ventilate their issues. In his address to the nation last night, he also said South Africa remains committed to engaging with the U.S. in respectful dialogue.
We offer the people of the United States nothing but goodwill and friendship. We affirm our commitment to continue to engage in dialogue with the United States government and to do so with respect and with dignity as equal sovereign countries. We value the United States government and its people as a partner. We have common interests, common values, and a shared wish to advance the prosperity and well-being of the people of both of our countries.
5 suspects are expected to appear in the Kempton Park Magistrate Court in Johannesburg, South Africa today. They are charged with contravening the Foreign Military Assistance Act. Police say the men were arrested at the OR Tambo International Airport en route to Russia. They are suspected to have been recruited to fight in the war against Ukraine. This comes after last week's report that another 17 South African men was stuck in Ukraine after being lured into joining mercenary forces with the promise of lucrative contracts. Hawk spokesperson Katleho Mohale.
This investigation went on upon the information that was received that allegedly there has been people who were sent to Russia to be part of the war that is going on there. The investigation is at its early stages and it is untoward for us to preempt as to who is involved without proper investigation taking place.
At least 19 people have died when a boat capsized in Lake Mai-Ndombe in the Democratic Republic of Congo due to heavy winds. The boat was traveling from a village of Kiri to Kinshasa when it lost one of its engines and overturned. Recovery efforts found 9 bodies initially, followed by 10 more, with 82 survivors reported. The boat reportedly carried over 200 passengers, and local officials noted that safety regulations regarding passenger capacity were not being followed. The World Health Organization joins partners and communities to commemorate World AIDS Day 2025 today, themed Overcoming Disruption, Transforming the AIDS Response. The agency has called for sustained political leadership, international cooperation, and human rights-centered approaches to end AIDS by 2030. In its annual report, the UNAIDS said 2.5 million people have lost access to medicine to block the spread of HIV. It said this is due to U.S. President Donald Trump's drastic cuts to funding since his return to office, adding that the abrupt reduction deepened existing funding shortfalls. An estimated 40.8 million people are living with HIV globally. And lastly, Iran has seized an Eswatini-flagged vessel carrying 350,000 litres of smuggled fuel. The semi-official Tasman news agency, citing a Revolutionary Guard Navy commander, said the fuel is in the form of gas oil. The vessel was brought to Bushehr coast following a judicial order in its contest unloaded. The commander added that 13 crew were from India and 1 from a neighboring country. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, all the action from the inter-club CAF competitions over the weekend, while India defeats South Africa by 17 runs in the first ODI. Details coming up at 6:30.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
A very good morning to you. Yes, this is Rise and Shine, and we always start after the 6 o'clock news with something we call the Africa Roundup. And here we take a look at the news and events that took place in the last 24 hours. And essentially what we're trying to do is catch you up with the important news, and we hope that this will also set you up for the news day ahead. And we do this with our team of journalists, reporters, correspondents, and analysts from across the continent and beyond, who will put all of those stories into context for us. So let's begin with this one, which takes us to West Africa, where Nigerian troops have rescued 12 young women who were abducted from their homes in Borno State by suspected Islamic State fighters last week. And the region remains at the heart of a religious conflict, now in its 16th year. The BBC's Chris Ewoko has more.
The group, aged between 15 and 20, were abducted a week ago while working in a farm around the Musa district of Borno State, one of several rural communities repeatedly targeted by Islamic State and Boko Haram factions. The army said the victims were freed on Saturday and taken to a military facility for psychological support before they are reunited with their families. The kidnapping comes as Nigeria faces a broader wave of insecurity, including a sharp rise in bandit attacks and abductions from schools in the country's northwest.
The Prime Minister of Senegal, Ousmane Sonko, has described last week's coup in neighbouring Guinea-Bissau as a sham and demanded its disputed election be allowed to continue. Speaking in Parliament, he said that Guinea-Bissau's Electoral Commission must declare the winner of that election.
What happened in Guinea is an unjustified sham. To be brief, I first demand that the electoral process be finalised and that the Commission announce the winner. The individuals who were arrested, including Domingos Pereira, who wasn't even a candidate and was arrested and couldn't even access his medication, must be released.
National Assembly Speaker in South Africa's Parliament, Thoko Didiza, says that climate change and its impact on women, especially in rural areas, will be given priority at the 58th SADC Plenary Forum in Durban this weekend. Now, the meeting is held under the theme, The Impact of Climate Change on Women and Youth in the SADC region, and the role of parliaments in the region towards climate change mitigation. Didiza says that delegates will also reflect on the progress being made in addressing these challenges in different countries.
And this is a meeting that is held at different times in different countries who will be the host as members of SADC. It allows us an opportunity to pick one theme area where we'll have a symposium and actually learn from each other on how we deal with some of those challenges. So today's theme that will be discussed in a symposium tomorrow relates to the impact of climate change on women and youth in the SADC region. And as South Africa, we felt KwaZulu-Natal would be the best location for such meeting because of how it has experienced inclement weather and disasters.
So the World Health Organization has for the first time issued guidelines on how infertility should be treated. It suggests that most effective medical treatments, but warns that the full psychological and social impact should also be considered. The BBC's Electra Naismith has more details.
The WHO says some 1 in 6 people of reproductive age will at some point struggle to conceive. Access to care is limited and differs hugely from country to country. Just one round of IVF can cost twice an average annual household income. The WHO sets out 40 recommendations, from the simple, like stopping smoking, to the more complex. It's hoped better provision will mean sufferers no longer having to choose between children and financial security.
So, Britain and Mexico have banned the import of pork from Spain because of an outbreak of African swine fever. China, where pork is pretty popular, has banned imports from Barcelona, where the outbreak was confirmed earlier this week. The BBC's Peter Hyatt tells us more.
Spain is the biggest pork producer in the European Union, and with its high-quality products, the industry is worth $9 billion a year. So the outbreak, the first in Spain for 3 decades, poses a real threat to Spanish farming. African swine fever is harmless to humans, but highly contagious among pigs and wild boar, where the latest outbreak was identified. There's no vaccine or cure, meaning farmers often cull their entire herd. The disease has been spreading westwards across Europe, with outbreaks in Germany in 2020 and more recently in Croatia.
Well, that's how we come to the end of today's Africa Roundup. There'll be more for you tomorrow after the 6 o'clock news. Stay with us. Coming up shortly, we're going to be looking at what President Ramaphosa has been up to.
New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
All right, it's 12 minutes or 13 minutes past 6 o'clock Central African time. My name is Peter Ndoro, and as I said, Asanda Bede is away today, and she'll be back tomorrow, one hopes. But let's start, as I said, with this story about President Cyril Ramaphosa, who says that the country remains committed to engaging in respectful dialogue with the United States. And this is despite the US boycotting the G20 Leaders Summit last weekend and subsequently declaring that South Africa is not welcome to attend next year's meeting, which will be hosting the new president Donald Trump. Now, President Ramaphosa was addressing the nation on Sunday evening at the Union Buildings in Pretoria, asserting that the success of the global meeting here in South Africa and also thank citizens for the hospitality shown to visiting delegates. Busi Bopela has more for us.
In his address, President Cyril Ramaphosa cited the glowing reviews the country has received for its hosting of the G20 summit from global leaders and ordinary delegates alike. Addressing the blemish in an otherwise seemingly good record of events, he said South Africa continues to be a great friend of the American people, despite the US's regrettable absence at the Leaders' Summit.
We offer the people of the United States nothing but goodwill and friendship. We affirm our commitment to continue to engage in dialogue with the United States government and to do so with respect and with dignity as equal sovereign countries. We value the United States government and its people as a partner. We have common interests, common values, and a shared wish to advance the prosperity and well-being of the people of both of our countries.
Ramaphosa says that the US's stance towards South Africa is fueled by disinformation by groups within the country and in the US, saying these are undermining the country's national security and destroying jobs. He outrightly rejected the US's intention to bar Pretoria from the G20 summit to be held in Miami under the presidency of the US.
We must make it clear that South Africa is one of the founding members of the G20, and South Africa is therefore a member of the G20 in its own name and right. We will continue to participate as a full, active, and constructive member of the G20. Despite the challenges and misunderstandings that have arisen between South Africa and the United States.
The president said that the signing of the G20 Leaders Summit Declaration is a triumph for the principle of multilateralism.
The adopted declaration reinforces the importance of the G20 as the premier forum for international economic cooperation and its continued relevance in the face of a rapidly changing global environment. This is particularly important as the G20 represents approximately 85% of the world's GDP, more than 75% of world trade, and also represents around 2/3 of the world's population.
Ramaphosa went on to thank all South Africans for the hospitality they showed to the foreign delegates, honing in on the country's municipalities, which played host to multiple meetings related to the G20 summit over the past year.
We thank our mayors, our councillors, and municipal workers who worked so hard to prepare our host cities and towns for the arrival of our visitors, particularly in Johannesburg, which hosted the Leaders' Summit. These cities and towns showed what can be done when a concerted and coordinated effort is made to fix potholes and street lights, to clean up our streets and maintain our infrastructure. This must continue past the G20 and must be expanded to areas of our towns and cities that have been neglected. This is the time to improve service delivery.
The president said that the country will continue to push for a more equal world by advocating for an international panel on inequality, debt relief for poorer countries, increased funding for climate change mitigation, and beneficiation of Africa's mineral wealth will continue to be issues the country will champion.
All right, so that was Busi Bopela with that report about President Ramaphosa's nation address, which took place at the weekend.
madapiri pazochitika. Madapiri pazochitika.
inogeka zingeni chihana lumbiritsidwa kukhala wachiwiri kwa mtsogoleri wa dziko la Malawi pa mwambo omwe unachitika ku nyumba ya chifumu ya Sanjika mu mzinda wa Blantyre. Ndiye pano tili ndi olemekezeka a chihana. Takulandirani olemekezeka pano pa wireless ya Channel Africa pa Chinyanja Service. Amalawi ayembekezere zotani kuchokera kwa inu ngati wachiwiri winanso kwa president wa dzikolo?
Choyamba ngati vice president umagwira ntchito yopatsidwa ndi president imene yakuganizira. Ndiye malowozi athu atipatsa bwinobwino, koma ntchito yathu yayikulu ndi kuwathandiza kuti masomphenya awo yakwanitsidwe. Pali zambiri zoti zichitike, nkhani ya njala mdziko muno, boma la udakali chimanga ndi china chomwe chili mdziko muno kuti tithandize families are affected. Chachiwiri kunali ma fuel shortages amene akanaliponso apo ndi apo, tionetsetse kuti pumps athu asakhale dry.
Zochitika pa nthawi ya 6 koloko kufikira 7 koloko madzulo, lolemba mpaka lachisanu ndi madapiri.
Start your day right with Channel Africa Breakfast.
That smells delicious.
Live 5 days a week.
Right, it's that time of the week where we start the week looking back at the week that was. And we do this with this roundup, the Africa Roundup, special roundup that we have with Mighty Jamie. Mighty Jamie, a very good morning to you. I hope you had a good week, brother.
Good morning, Peter. Good morning to the listeners. I did have a good week. I hope you had one too.
Not bad at all, my end. So, Guinea-Bissau. I mean, this is a bizarre story. Some people just don't buy into the story that this is a genuine coup, especially Senegal's president. But I also had an analyst last week in studio, and he said this has all been made up. What's your take?
Well, it is a bizarre story indeed, and we have to just consider the alternatives and try to weigh up on a balance of probabilities what could be happening here. Because we've seen Senegal's prime minister and Nigeria's former president saying that they don't believe that this is a real coup and that they believe that it is a staged coup to prevent the results being announced, because the current president, Cisco Embalo, has lost the election. And these are people who have been part of observer missions or have been getting feedback from observer missions about the results of the election. So it was a competitive election, and it may very well be that this is the case. And I think what now needs to happen, perhaps, Peter, is that there needs to be some kind of a delegation from the African Union, from the other regional bodies, to try to get to the bottom of what is happening here, particularly because we know that the military suspended the electoral process, blocked the release of the results. And this is a weird time for a coup to happen. Typically, the military would do a coup after an election if they thought that the results were dissatisfactory or if there was something to that effect. And we did discuss last week the types of things that would happen when you have elections which are not free and fair, when you have a lot of opposition voices being unhappy. But if citizens are genuinely frustrated and they don't want to give a particular regime any more time to lead, they will choose anybody who's on the ballot who is not the ruling party. And it seems as if that may be what has happened here. It's very unclear. It's a very bizarre situation. I would not put it past a dictator or somebody who's in a position where they're trying to hold on to power by any means necessary to actually fabricate a coup. And I think we may now have a different type of coup added to the English dictionary if indeed this is a coup hoax.
Yeah, very, very bizarre story indeed. I've been watching Tanzania quite a bit, and the fallout actually that Samia Suluhu Hassan has been facing. I see that the European Union has talked about freezing aid to the country. Where does that take us, do you think? I mean, is there universal acceptance now that this election really did not deliver a free and fair election, and that these killings have become the biggest stain, perhaps, on Tanzanian history for decades and decades?
Yes, Peter, I think that there is almost a universal consensus now that these elections are not free and fair. And to have the election missions from SADC, to have the election missions from the African Union, basically saying that those elections were not free and fair, that there was stuffing of ballots, and that there was extensive political violence, was something that was even bold for them to do, because they've often been hesitant to go all the way and make those kind of proclamations and those kind of findings. I recently saw that former president of South Africa, Thabo Mbeki, also had written on this particular election. We've seen other voices as well condemning the election. So the European Union jumping in to also put some pressure and to say that they're cancelling or will be suspending, all forms of aid that they're providing, I think just shows us that definitely it is a large stain, and now it's going to be something that will have impact on the administration. Of course, we saw President Samia trying to, make reconciliatory, overtures to young people, saying that we're not going to prosecute you to the max. It's a time for healing, and instructing her national prosecuting authorities not to pursue maximum charges for protesters. But in and of itself, that was a bizarre response, because they were operating in peaceful protests and they were not supposed to be charged. And remember, at some point she said that they were manipulated. It is a stain, and her responses have been inadequate. And I think one of the things that is now important for everyone to establish is just how extensive was the political violence after the elections and maybe even prior, because it does seem as if there was system-wide repression and suppression of voters. And the question then becomes, what next? Because I do not think that Samia has any intentions to, have a re-election or anything to that effect. And perhaps there needs to be a court challenge to the African court and to see whether or not they will be able to entertain that. But as things stand, it does not look like there's a lot of room to go forward, but it does look as if there's a general understanding and consensus that that was an unfair election, but also that there was extensive political violence in Tanzania. They've definitely lost a lot of stature as a result of these particular types of decisions that they took to make sure that Samia wins with that ludicrous percentage of 98%. The whole thing is just a sham, and it's shambolic, and she's definitely damaged the reputation of her country, and this may affect tourist visits as well, Peter.
Tunisia, President Kais, I mean, we know that he's been holding the country with a firm hand. Some might even call it a regime, pretty much centralizing power. And he was popular for a really long time, and I couldn't understand why. But it seems as if he's now falling out of favor, and that he's been found out by his own citizens. They went to the streets, and typically an opposition figure was arrested. What's your take on what's happening in Tunisia? Are we seeing a rebellion by the citizens?
We are seeing that there's an increased level of frustration by the citizens. And I think Tunisia is an interesting case study, because this is where the Arab Spring started. This is where a lot of the pro-democratic movement happened, if you recall, was it 2011 or thereabouts. And the people have a revolutionary spirit. They do have an activist spirit, if you will. And they're increasingly getting frustrated with what they are seeing coming from President Kais. And I think it is a moment of frustration. What we saw is that the opposition leader, Chaima Issa, was arrested as she was taking part in a protest. But there's a ruling that has come out from the courts that has led to multiple people being arrested, including Issa, who was given a 20-year prison sentence, which has been described by her as unjust and politically motivated. It feels as this case is learning from the book of Idi Amin and several other people who chose this particular approach, such lengthy prison sentences for political opponents, for media, for intellectuals. All of this is anti-democratic. All of this is regressive. But it does look as if the people are actually getting frustrated, and we're seeing volumes of protests happening. Now the question then becomes, is it another Arab Spring, or are these protests going to be thwarted? But you're right, he was popular. He came in, constitutional law lecturer, and then basically abused the very same constitution that he said he was going to uphold and promote. It's a tragedy, really.
And then a family meeting, a term that we use in South Africa. President Ramaphosa addressing the nation and basically saying, look, we did a really good job on G20, but there is this thorny issue of this relationship with the United States. Where to from here, do you think?
Yes. So I think I did watch the presentation by President Ramaphosa. He was very calm. He was very measured. He was very presidential. That is his A game that he can play at any given moment. And he thanked the people of South Africa. He made some remarks, about the participation of American businesses in the B20, how it was inclusive, the social summits, and then he made the remarks about America. But I think before we talk about the America side, it is also, I think, important for us as Africans to keep our eyes on the ball in terms of the mineral beneficiation side of the story that you were speaking on. We will need to see what is the actual G20 going to do to make that a possibility for African nations. The debt restructuring, there's conversations about that because, as we know, many African countries are basically being sunk by the weight of their debt. So we'll have to look at that. Now, coming to this conversation about America, it's conciliatory in his approach, but Donald Trump is not a conciliatory type of leader, and he's already indicated that he is going to take various measures to make sure that South Africa does not participate. I'm not sure that global leaders will boycott an American G20 where South Africa is not invited or included, and that may harm the credibility of the whole thing. And knowing Donald Trump, he may even scrap the whole thing and say that it's not going to go ahead if global leaders such as France and India try to push back, which I don't think they will. So South Africa is between a rock and a hard place when it comes to this, Jean-Peter, because the negotiation needs two sides to be willing to make a compromise. And while President Ramaphosa is conciliatory, I do not think that Washington right now under Donald Trump will extend the same gesture to South Africa and to Pretoria. And that's where I think the challenge rests with this moment.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bizarre story. I think one economist last week described, I think he was delivering the UNISA Foundation lecture, and he said that Donald Trump is behaving like a 4-year-old. But I wonder if actually he owns the G20, that he can tell people not to come. You don't have to answer that because we don't have time. But thank you so much, Jamie. Always good talking to you. Have a fabulous week ahead, brother.
Pleasure, Peter, and good week to the listeners as well.
That's Mighty Jamie, one of our regular commentators, analysts, unpacking the week that was for us. It is 6:30, which means it's time for your news headlines. We say good morning once again to Onele Nsinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. President Cyril Ramaphosa says disinformation amongst groups in the country is fueling the U.S. stance towards South Africa. Ramaphosa says this is undermining South Africa's national security. Nigerian troops have rescued 12 young women who were abducted from their homes in Borno State by suspected Islamic State fighters last week. The region remains at the heart of a religious conflict, now in its 16th year. And Sri Lanka has appealed for international help as it struggles to tackle some of the worst flooding in its recent history. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Nsinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Time now for a first look at what's been happening in the world of sports. In our first bulletin, we say good morning to Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you so much, Peter. Very good morning from the sports desk. Now, St. Elulupopo hit back late to draw 1-0 with Al Hilal Omdurman in Lubumbashi on Sunday, a result that keeps Group C finally poised after 2 matches of the Total Energies CAF Champions League. Now, the draw follows Friday's goalless meeting between MC Alger as well as Mamelodi Sundowns in Algiers. Sundowns now lead Group C on goal difference with 4 points, level with Al Hilal of Sudan. MC Alger of Algeria sit third on 2 points, while Lupopo from the Democratic Republic of Congo have just 1 point after 2 matches. Now, both teams resume continental duty in January, with Lupopo aiming now to turn improved second half momentum into the first group win, and Al Hilal meanwhile looking to maintain their unbeaten start so far in the CAF Champions League group stages. Meanwhile, South African side Stellenbosch FC's perfect start to the CAF Confederation Cup Cup was halted in Zanzibar as Singida Black Stars of Tanzania fought back to draw 1-1 at the end of the 90 minutes. Nalangalihle Pili also marked his 50th appearance for Stellenbosch FC with the opener for the Maroons, but the Tanzanian side struck late to earn their first goal and first points of the campaign. Stellenbosch FC meanwhile remained top of Group C with about 4 points, one clear of AS Ohoto as well as CR Belouizdad. Singida meanwhile sit bottom of the table with a single point after 2 matches played. On to some cricket news now. Rohit Sharma broke the record for the most sixes hit in men's one-day internationals as India edged South Africa about 17 runs in the opening game of the series in Ranchi on Sunday. After being asked to bat first, India posted 349 for the loss of 8 wickets, with Virat Kohli hitting a record-extending 52nd ODI century with a brilliantly paced 135 of 120 balls. He shared 136 with Rohit Sharma, who made 57 of 51 balls for the second wicket. Rohit Sharma, meanwhile, who was had already held the record for the most sixes across formats in international cricket, now at 642, hit about 3 sixes to overtake Shahid Afridi's 15-year record of 351 ODI maximums. Now, South Africa slipped then to 11 for the loss of 3 wickets in reply and 130 for 5, but Matthew Bitsky hit 72 of 80 balls while Marco Jansen got to 70 runs of 39 balls and then gave South Africa some hope with a 97-run partnership between the two players. Now both were then dismissed in the 34th over by Kuldeep Yadav, and South Africa's hopes seemed over at 228 runs for the loss of 7 wickets. So they went on to lose that game by 17 runs. The second game of the 3-match ODI series will take place on Wednesday. In Formula 1 news now, Max Verstappen claimed a crucial victory in the Qatar Grand Prix from Oscar Piastri, with the title battle set to go down to the final round as championship leader Lando Norris could not finish, or rather only managed to finish in 4th position. So Verstappen's unlikely win was courtesy of McLaren's alternate strategy, which came as a consequence of an early safety car intervention and an enforced 25-lap maximum stint length on all Piastri's tyre sets. Now, the Red Bull driver jumped Norris on the run to the first turn from position 3 on the grid and shadowed Pullman Piastri in the opening laps before a clash between Nico Hülkenberg as well as Pierre Gasly at turn 1. Several laps later turned the race on its head. So while all drivers pitted for the very first time in 2 mandatory pit stops in the 57-lap race, both Piastri as well as Norris remained out on the track, which ultimately put them behind Verstappen in the final order. Let's hear from Verstappen after winning that race in the build-up to that final race in Abu Dhabi next weekend.
Yeah, this was an incredible race for us. We made the right call there as a team to box under that safety car, and that was smart. And of course, super happy to win here. We stay, of course, in the fight till the end. Incredible. But
All right, so that concludes your sports news this hour. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11714 4459. I'm back with more sports news in the next hour. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Mosibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Conversations are happening, and Channel Africa is at the heart of them. We tell the African story with clarity, pride, and purpose, reaching audiences that matter to your brand. Partner with us and connect your business with listeners across borders in multiple languages and markets. For partnership opportunities, sponsorship, or sales, email us at partnership@channelafrica.co.za. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Right, it's 6:37 Central African time. A very good morning to you. For those of you who have just joined us, you've missed out on quite a bit already, but look, there's still a packed program ahead. My name is Peter Ndoro, and Asanda Beda is away today, but let's take a look at what's been happening in the world of business. And with us today on the business desk is Matapelo Mahape. A very good morning to you.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter, and good morning. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa has lauded the work by municipalities in preparing for the G20 summit in Johannesburg, which culminated in the leaders' meeting more than a week ago. This was part of the live address by Ramaphosa last night. He thanked all South Africans for the hospitality they extended to the thousands of foreign delegates. The G20 summit saw more than 130 meetings held in every part of the country as well as on the African continent over the past year of the country's presidency of the economic bloc. The president says citizens had shown the world the strength of South African values, the generosity and the power of working together.
We thank our mayors, our councillors and municipal workers who worked so hard to prepare our host cities and towns for the arrival of our visitors, particularly in Johannesburg, which hosted the Leaders' Summit. These cities and towns showed what can be done when a concerted and coordinated effort is made to fix potholes and street lights, to clean up our streets and maintain our infrastructure. This must continue past the G20 and must be expanded to areas of our towns and cities that have been neglected. This is the time to improve service delivery.
President Ramaphosa added that the government will continue to improve infrastructure in the country after intensive efforts to address problems including repairing potholes in Johannesburg ahead of the G20 summit. He has highlighted the importance of working together, saying it has led to the economy showing signs of recovery.
It is therefore essential that we work together so that we can attract investment, promote inclusive growth and create jobs. Through the work we are doing together, we are beginning to see the green shoots of an emerging economic recovery. Unemployment is falling and has been recorded as such in recent months. Our public finances are improving, allowing us to steadily reduce our national debt. We have recently seen a sovereign credit rating upgrade.
And Senegalese authorities are working to prevent an oil spill after the Panamanian oil tanker Mersin, owned by Turkey's Mersin Shipping Incorporated, reported water entering its engine room near Dakar. The incident, which occurred overnight between the 27th and the 28th of November, prompted the deployment of tugboats and specialized teams with all crew members rescued safely. Measures are being taken to stabilize the vessel and prevent hydrocarbon leaks, including transferring the fuel cargo and deploying an anti-pollution boom. Images indicate that the vessel may be at risk of flooding. And employees of Barrick Mining in Mali have been released after a year of detention amid a dispute over the country's mining code. The conflict revolved around Mali's increased share of gold revenues due to a surge in gold prices. Barrick announced an agreement with the Mali government to resolve all disputes related to the Loulo-Guangoto mining complex, which included the release of detained employees. They had been imprisoned since November of 2024. And Airbus has implemented rapid software changes to address a vulnerability related to the solar flares that affect its A320 jets, resulting in a mandatory retrofit for airlines worldwide. While many airlines have complied with the retrofit, some include Colombia's Avianca are deploying or delaying bookings until December 8th. This decision to recall about 6,000 A320 family aircraft was prompted by an investigation into a recent JetBlue incident that raised safety concerns. And a look at your financial indicators. A $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 447. In Botswana, it's 14 pula 14. Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shilling 73. And in Zambia, it's 22 kwacha 86. The BRICS countries, a $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 real 33. Russia, it's 77 rubles 43. India, it's 89 rupees 34. China, it's 7 yuan 6. And in South Africa, $1 is trading at 17 rands at 10 cents. $1 is trading at 75 pence to the British pound and 86 to the euro. A look at your commodities. Gold is trading at $4,239 and platinum at $1,703 per ounce, while the price of Brent crude oil is at $63.32 a barrel. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business News, I am Matapela Mahape.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. This World AIDS Day will rise above disruption, transforming the AIDS response for every African community on Channel Africa.
Yeah, World AIDS Day today, and we're going to be trying to speak to people about it. It's very, very important, in fact, critically important this year. So the AIDS fight has gone through a number of disruptions, actually. You remember during the COVID-19 pandemic, that was the first disruption. We were doing really well, and we were targeting towards 2030, a big landmark in terms of where we would be in terms of fighting AIDS. Then COVID-19 disrupted, and then the beginning of this year, President Donald Trump decided that the United States was going to withdraw its massive funding for the AIDS programs across the world, and developing nations such as those in Africa were hit the hardest. And sadly, that has caused a huge disruption. And this is why this year's theme is talking about finding a way back to an AIDS response, as it were. All right, we are busy.
New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
All right, so as I was saying, we're talking about the HIV/AIDS story and World AIDS Day today. And the World Health Organization has joined partners and communities to commemorate World AIDS Day 2025 today under the theme Overcoming Disruption, Transforming the AIDS Response. And the agency has called for sustained political leadership, international cooperation, and human rights-centered approaches to end AIDS by 2030. In its annual report, the UNAIDS has said that 2.5 million people have lost access to medicine to block the spread of HIV. And for more on this, we're now joined on the line by Professor Lee Fairley from the WITS Reproductive Health and HIV Institute in South Africa. Prof, thanks very much indeed for joining us, and welcome to the program.
Morning. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
I guess this year's theme speaks volumes to the challenges that the fight against HIV has been facing, given what we saw at the beginning of this year, the withdrawal of so much funding.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just to really acknowledge, what a tough year it's been for people, both for healthcare workers, for researchers really trying to kind of, find optimized treatment and prevention options. And then, of course, people living with HIV themselves, the community, certainly it has been a tremendously challenging year for people. So I think really upfront just to acknowledge that.
Where are we in South Africa and the continent in general in terms of the disruption, where we were heading? Because I know that we were making great strides in South Africa in particular. Where are we now? Have we had a chance to take stock?
Yeah, I think we still may not understand the full extent. And certainly, South Africa's HIV treatment program is really world class, and it really is very well established. And so I think that we had less impact probably than many of our neighbors. I think that certainly a number of other countries on the continent were extremely hard hit by the funding cuts. In South Africa, we're living with about 8 million people who are living with HIV. And about 150,000 South Africans acquire HIV on an annual basis. Well, those are the figures from 2023. And I think, as we know, adolescent girls and young women still continue to bear a disproportionate burden of new infections. Globally, we're looking at about 40.8 million people living with HIV, and about 1.3 million become infected on an annual basis. So certainly this is a tremendous improvement from our previous, say 10, 20, 30 decades ago. It is actually about a 54% decrease since 2010. But we're not quite there yet. Also, around 77% of people are accessing treatment who are living with HIV. But we know that in particular groups, so for example, like in children, we actually have much lower rates, so probably around about 65% of children who are living with HIV who are on antiretrovirals. So certainly there are still gaps and tremendous gaps that exist, and we still need to work extremely hard to try and close those gaps.
Have always been the most vulnerable of the groupings. Is that still the case?
Sorry, I didn't hear you the first.
Sorry, I was just saying that young females have traditionally been the most vulnerable. Is that still the case?
That is still the case. We have some very, very exciting new modalities, though, in terms of HIV prevention. The prevention campaign in South Africa is also extremely strong. There are probably about 2 million people who are accessing PrEP. And I'm sure you've probably heard of lenacapavir, which is really a sort of game changer in terms of HIV prevention. It's a 6-monthly injection, which is given subcutaneously, and essentially has shown an almost 100% prevention of HIV. And we know that is actually being rolled out in some demonstration projects quite soon, but by April, May next year will actually be quite widely available in the public space. And that is a very exciting modality in terms of getting us further in preventing HIV, especially in adolescent girls and young women.
Do we know how well we're doing in terms of these 95 targets? And just to help our listeners, 95% of all people living with HIV should know their status. 95% of those who know their status should be on antiretroviral treatment, and 95% of those on treatment should have a suppressed undetectable viral load. How close are we to that?
So we still have work to do. So certainly in adult populations, we generally tend to do a little bit better, especially in terms of people who know their status being on antiretrovirals. But as the sort of cascade progresses, unfortunately, we see sort of steady fall off. And then there's particular groups that are not doing as well. So, for example, children, by the time we actually get to viral suppression, those figures are really much lower than we would like them to be. Another group that is also needs specific attention is adolescents, and then of course some of the marginalized groups and actually groups who had substantial impacts of their funding, of the funding cuts. So. Transgender people, men who have sex with men, sex workers, those are really groups who've been particularly hard hit with the funding cuts. And there we really do need to work hard to make sure that people are retained in care and that they remain virally suppressed.
So HIV is no longer really a death sentence that it used to be before. Are people still not testing with the stigma associated with it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always a surprise, I think, to still hear how much stigma there is related to HIV, given how common it is in our sort of context and globally, and certainly it's something that drives people not to test. It may drive people not to take treatment if they're living with HIV. And certainly, this again is somewhere that we really need to kind of understand stigma. We need to understand why, this is still so pervasive, and how we can actually reduce it. Because, obviously, as you say, with current treatments, I mean, we're a far cry from kind of 30 years ago, where, we were sort of first seeing people living with HIV really had very little to offer in terms of treatment, whereas now, almost everybody in South Africa who's on the treatment program is on a fixed dose combination with dolutegravir containing treatment, very few side effects, very efficient and effective treatment. It really drops someone's viral load very, very quickly. So yeah, I mean, and obviously the message really is that if somebody is living with HIV, the quicker they get onto treatment, the better their outcomes. And certainly we, currently don't expect people who are living with HIV to have much of a reduced lifespan even, so certainly massive shift over the last 30 years. But people do need to test, they need to know their status, and they need to get onto antiretrovirals as quickly as possible.
So ending AIDS by 2030 is the target. Do you think that there's enough political leadership to get the job done?
I think there is, but there are additional components that are required. So obviously, especially around the PrEP or prevention campaigns, there is funding and investment required around that. And certainly there are many partners who do come to the table and who support many of these programs on a large scale. And so I think it's, to really hope that sort of funding and investment continues. I think we're all aware of gender inequality and gender-based violence, and the recent sort of announcement from the presidency. Obviously, this is an issue that can potentially drive HIV infection and lack of equity and equality for women in being able to negotiate sex, being able to negotiate prevention. We need to keep our focus on key populations and making sure that they have access to care and to treatment, and then really to keep up our prevention efforts. This is really, and this can both be somebody accessing PrEP directly themselves for prevention, but then also people who are living with HIV, who are on antiretrovirals and who are virally suppressed, actually cannot transmit HIV on to a sexual partner. U equals U, which I'm sure you've heard of, but really, it's a very important driver for people in terms of considering their adherence and knowing that actually you can probably be sexually active, being virally suppressed and not transmit HIV. And I think that's a very powerful tool for people.
So, I mean, this next question might be a little unfair, but forgive me. I'm just curious. We found a solution to COVID within a year. Why, since I think 1981 was the first official AIDS case, why has this journey been so long?
So if you referring specifically to the vaccine, I think it's really the way that the virus is kind of constituted. It's actually very difficult to find a vaccine against the virus. And certainly I'm no expert, so I'm going to stop there. I think I think on the treatment side, there really has been tremendous progress. As I mentioned, since probably moving from sort of 2015 upwards, there's really been a steady improvement in the treatment available to people living with HIV. And as I mentioned earlier, currently almost all people who are on a treatment program, including children, are actually on a dolutegravir containing antiretroviral regimen, and children, most of them actually take a fixed dose combination, although for children they may have to take individual drugs. So there actually has been tremendous progress. There's been tremendous progress in the prevention field. So in addition to lenacapavir, there's also been cabotegravir, which has also been shown to be highly effective in preventing HIV. And then numerous other modalities like the piperine ring, obviously oral PrEP, which works very well, but people do struggle with adherence to oral PrEP. So actually we do have a number of different components in our toolkit that we can use, but we do need to kind of move forward and actually use them, and I think we have to, make people aware of HIV testing. If you're positive, you need to go into treatment. If you're negative, you need to consider PrEP. And so we really need to make sure that we can optimize all of these tools, because they do exist and there has actually been substantial progress, but we just need to make sure that access is not a challenge for people.
Prof, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thanks so much indeed for joining us and talking to us on this very important day. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the opportunity.
That's Professor Fairley, who's with the WITS Reproductive Health and HIV Institute here in South Africa, talking to us on World AIDS Day.
From Africa's broadcast capital to the furthest corners of the globe, this is Rise and Shine, every weekday mornings on Channel Africa.
7 o'clock is your time. Thanks so much indeed for tuning in. And this is the second hour of Rise and Shine today, broadcasting live from our studios in Johannesburg, South Africa. I'm Peter Ndoro. Asanda Beda is not with us today. Hopefully she'll be back tomorrow. And we have a packed program for you as usual. Coming up in this hour, we'll be taking a look at the presidents of the DRC and Rwanda. This week expected to travel to the US to sign a final peace agreement aimed at ending the long-running conflict in the east of the DRC. And the government of the Kingdom of Eswatini has rubbished reports that one of its Eswatini-flagged vessels has been seized in Iran, and it's suspected to have been carrying smuggled fuel. All right, we'll get to the top of that story in this hour. But first, here's your news with Onele Nsinzi, and that'll be followed by the sports headlines with Musibudi Rachel Makura.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Well, thank you, Peter. President Cyril Ramaphosa says disinformation amongst groups in the country is fueling the U.S. stance towards South Africa. He says this is undermining South Africa's national security and hampering the government's efforts to create jobs. Ramaphosa has appealed to those who he says have been spreading disinformation about the country to join the country's national dialogue to ventilate their issues. In his address to the nation last night, he also said South Africa remained committed to engaging with the U.S. in a respectful dialogue.
We offer the people of the United States nothing but goodwill and friendship. We affirm our commitment to continue to engage in dialogue with the United States government and to do so with respect and with dignity as equal sovereign countries. We value the United States government and its people as a partner. We have common interests, common values, and a shared wish to advance the prosperity and well-being of the people of both of our countries.
South Africa's former president, Jacob Zuma, will this morning launch an appeal against the judgment of the High Court in Johannesburg, ordering him to repay the $1.6 million in state-funded legal fees. The special motion will be heard virtually. The application puts the presidency, the state attorney, and the solicitor general against Zuma, with the Democratic Alliance and Economic Freedom Fighters as interested parties. Zuma's appeal follows a judgment that found that he was not entitled to taxpayers-funded legal support and ordered repayment with interest. Nigerian troops have rescued 12 young women who were abducted from their homes in Borno State by suspected Islamic State fighters last week. The region remains at the heart of a religious conflict now in its 16th year. The BBC's Chris Ewoko.
The group, aged between 15 and 20, were abducted a week ago while working in a farm around the Musa district of Borno State, one of several rural communities repeatedly targeted by Islamic State and Boko Haram factions. The army said the victims were freed on Saturday and taken to a military facility for psychological support before they are reunited with their families. The kidnapping comes as Nigeria faces a broader wave of insecurity, including a sharp rise in bandit attacks and abductions from schools in the country's northwest.
The World Health Organization joins partners and communities to commemorate World AIDS Day 2025 today, themed Overcoming Disruption, Transforming the AIDS Response. The agency has called for sustained political leadership, international cooperation, and human rights-centered approaches to end AIDS by 2030. In its annual report, the UNAIDS said 2.5 million people have lost access to medicine to block the spread of HIV. It said this is due to the U.S. President Donald Trump's drastic cuts to funding since his return to office, adding that the abrupt reduction deepened existing funding shortfalls. An estimated 40.8 million people are living with HIV globally. And lastly, Sri Lanka has appealed for international help as it struggles to tackle some of the worst flooding in its recent history. President Anura Kumara Disayakaya says they are facing highly challenging rescue and reconstruction operations. More than 330 people are known to have been killed, the BBC's Anbarasan Etirajan reports.
The intensity of the rain was so much, and they had not seen this kind of rain and flooding for several years. And also the speed. One of the residents near the Kalani River in the capital, Colombo, was saying people were warning about river is rising. Okay, by the time we gathered our stuff, we rushed out. The water level rose so rapidly, we didn't even have a chance to even take our pets or other items. So that was what is surprising, the speed with which the water level was increasing.
Channel Africa News, I am Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, Hugo Bruce to name his Bafana Bafana AFCON squad today, while it will go down to the wire in the 2025 Formula One season. Details of these and other stories coming up at 7:30.
New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Right, let's go to the DRC now. The president of the Democratic Republic of Congo, Felix Tshisekedi, is this week expected to travel to the United States to sign a final peace agreement with his Rwandan counterpart, Paul Kagame. And this is aimed at ending the long-running conflict in the east of the country. Now, the deal, the result of months of diplomacy led by President Donald Trump, comes amid ongoing tension over Rwanda's alleged support for the M23 rebel group. The Congolese government has insisted that the agreement will only move forward if Rwanda withdraws backing for the rebels. Well, for more on this, we're now joined on the line by SABC correspondent in the DRC, Chris Ochamringa. Chris, great to talk to you. Thanks so much indeed for joining us. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Peter Ndoro, for having me.
So, Chris, a lot of hope has been placed on this deal conjured up by President Donald Trump. The question is, for some people might be, how is it that President Kagame is expected to be signing this when he says he has no control of the M23?
Hello, Peter, can you hear me?
Hi, Chris, we can hear you loud and clear. Did you get my question?
Hello, Peter, can you please repeat that?
I was just saying that the deal that's supposed to be signed by President Kagame and President Tshisekedi, some people might be surprised that President Kagame is actually going because he says he has no control over the M23. Why would his signature be on this agreement? All right, it looks like we've lost Chris Ochamringa there in the DRC. We're going to try and get him back on the line to get to the top of this. And we're already seeing, I think, some challenges because President Kagame is actually saying that this deal might be problematic because the DRC is delaying signing it. So we'll have to see if this actually does take off the ground. Remember, there are other deals that have been brokered in the past and seemingly haven't been successful. So one wonders if this one that President Trump has engineered might be the one to save the day. We'll be tracking that. But as I said, we're going to try and connect with our correspondent, Chris Ochamringa. I think he's back on the line now. Chris, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Peter.
All right, I can hear you loud and clear now. All right, so inside DRC, what is the feeling in terms of this agreement actually happening, actually getting signed, and actually resulting in something?
Well, there is a mixed reaction in the DRC about this agreement that has been brokered by the United States. Most of the people in the east of the DRC who have been displaced multiple times and who are fed up of this conflict that has left thousands, tens of thousands of their people dead, just want peace to be restored in eastern DRC. That really don't care about the fine details of what is going to be included in this agreement. They just want to go back home and continue their ordinary lives. But other people in the capital, Kinshasa, and especially the educated, the elite of Congo, are not happy about this deal that was brokered by the United States because they are saying that it seems to be favoring Rwanda more than the DRC. And when they talk about that, they are referring to a regional economic integration framework, which is supposed to be established. Rwanda and the DRC are supposed to expand trade and investment in the area of mining, tourism, and infrastructure sectors. The DRC officials, elite, are saying that this is clearly going to be promoting impunity. Rwanda sent its troops to DRC to fight alongside M23, and when the conflict is resolved, there cannot be such an agreement, a deal in that peace agreement. So people are, especially the elite people, are not very happy about this. They're saying America seems to be siding with Rwanda in this peace process. Peter?
Again, big questions being asked. It suggests as if the M23 are the only fighting units in the east of the country, and also that Rwanda is the only other country, neighboring state, that has an interest in what's happening in the east of the DRC. We often hear about Burundi and Uganda. Is this agreement sustainable in terms of, is everybody who's involved actually at the table?
No, they aren't at the table, and that is something that might pose serious challenges in future. Because, like you rightly stated, Uganda has its troops that came under a bilateral security agreement with the DRC government. They are fighting a militia known as Allied Democratic Forces in the east of the DRC. They're also in an area known as Ituri, an area that's very rich in gold. They're fighting a group known as the Cooperative for the Development of Congo. And a couple of months ago, the chief of the defense forces of the Ugandan army, General Muhoozi Kainerugaba, who happens to be the son of the Ugandan president Yoweri Museveni, said that there will not be any agreement signed by the US without the involvement of Uganda and Rwanda. So Ugandan authorities are not very happy that this is being done between DRC and Rwanda, because they say they also have interests. Burundi hasn't issued any statement or hasn't made any public opposition to this US brokered deal, but there's certainly, all these countries, neighboring countries, have interests in the DRC, and they're saying that there are rebel groups from their country who are operating in eastern DRC, and until those rebels are neutralized, it will always be a problem to their country. And so this deal, the US is saying they're going to focus on DRC and Rwanda, but there are other players in this conflict in eastern DRC. Peter?
Chris, I guess to try and see if this one might work, why have the ones in the past failed? There have been a number of initiatives. Regional bodies have tried to intervene. Why have they failed in the past?
Well, there have been a number of reasons. The major one that especially the rebels have been putting forward is that the DRC government has not been respecting all these deals that were signed. You remember in 2001, there was the inter-Congolese dialogue in South Africa, in Sun City, that brought together all these different warring parties, rebel groups, and they agreed to stop fighting, and they were integrated in the Congolese army. But then along the way, there were certain things that were not done right. The DRC is a country that faces multiple domestic challenges. There's a lot of corruption, there's indiscipline in the army, and all this is playing into, affecting the implementation of some of these deals. The other issue is the question of the citizenship of the Tutsi Congolese Tutsis who were found in eastern DRC. Many people in the DRC government feel that this group, ethnic group, has been betraying the people of Congo. Whenever there's a problem between DRC and Rwanda, they always pledge their allegiance to the Rwandan government, which is led by Paul Kagame, and these are, ethnic Tutsis. So people in Congo say these are not our citizens. Whenever we have a problem, they seem to be siding with our enemies, so they shouldn't be granted citizenship, and that has been a source of serious tension. The Tutsi community in eastern DRC are saying they're going to fight to the last man, and so until the DRC government finds a way of resolving this problem and the many other domestic challenges, it's going to be problematic implementing these peace agreements. Peter?
Yeah, this is going to be quite a long journey here going forward, I'm pretty sure. I've lost my train of thought there. Forgive me. This agreement, I think you mentioned some aspects of it, but it talks about disengagement, disarmament, and conditional integration of armed groups. What are the specifics of this process, particularly regarding M23 rebels and the FDLR militia?
Yeah, so there are two major issues. One is that both countries are supposed to, Rwanda, DRC are supposed to respect each other's sovereignty and territorial integrity, and by doing so, the DRC government is supposed to neutralize the FDLR, which is a Hutu militant group that participated in the Rwandan genocide in 1994. Now, by neutralizing, they mean they should be disarmed or killed if they do not surrender. And in return, Rwanda is supposed to withdraw its troops from the DRC. According to the UN group of experts, Rwanda has about more than 6,000 troops who are fighting alongside the M23 rebels at captured territories like Goma, Bukavu, and many other areas in South and North Kivu. So that is a key issue of this deal that the United States has come up with. There's also the issue of the reintegration of non-combatants, that is M23 and other militia groups that have been fighting alongside the DRC army. They're supposed to be integrated in the Congolese army, but that is going to be carried out on a case-by-case basis. They're going to consider whether some of these combatants have been engaged in any serious violations of international humanitarian law. And only those who have a clean record will be integrated in the Congolese army. But recently, President Felix Tshisekedi traveled to Serbia and he met the Congolese community living there, and he told them there will be no integration of M23 soldiers in the army, what they call in French mixage and brassage, because they're saying in the past that is something that they have tried and it has failed to work, because they're saying some of these ethnic Tutsis from Congo have always been kind of spying for the Rwandan government, and so they do not want that to happen. And so just before even this deal has been signed, we're seeing some cracks and potential trouble ahead. Peter?
All right, and perhaps very briefly, and I should have started with this actually, the M23 themselves sitting pretty cozy at the moment, controlling significant parts of the eastern DRC. What are they saying about this agreement?
Well, the M23 leader, Corneille Nangaa, has previously said that agreement does not concern them. It's between two states, the DRC and Rwanda. What they're focusing on is the talks that are going on in Doha between them and the DRC government. But if you look at the provisions of both these deals, they're very similar. The issue of stopping fighting between the two sides, the issue of a return of refugees, particularly Tutsis who fled to Rwanda, Uganda, and other countries in the Great Lakes region, the issue of stopping support for the FDLR, all these are included in both peace agreements. So M23 are still continuing to carry out the administration in those areas they have occupied, and quite a very interesting turn of events is that fighting has intensified in North and South Kivu province in the east of the DRC. The government in the DRC has been bombarding positions of the rebels. The rebels have been capturing new territory. So many people are very surprised that the two leaders, Rwanda's President Paul Kagame and Felix Tshisekedi, are going to Washington at a time when there's more fighting on the ground. We're just waiting to see how this will happen. Peter?
Chris, that's where we'll leave it. Thanks so much indeed for that update. Thanks for your time.
Welcome. You're welcome.
That's SABC correspondent Chris Ochamringa reporting there from the DRC, Kinshasa, the capital, about this deal that is expected to be signed between President Kagame of Rwanda and President Tshisekedi of the DRC. But questions are being raised, and some people not happy, and those that are most affected just want peace.
Africa at Play with Neto and ETO Chemane.
I've witnessed something fresh, something exciting, and something very inspirational from the president of the country, William Ruto. Whenever athletes are performing to their best level, he always comes on board to reward those athletes, be it football, be it athletics, and not leaving it up to the sport ministry.
The president realizes that sports is a business, and for that reason, he also reduces the number of people who are jobless, because sports now now is such a serious business, and for that reason, commercialization of sports is a major way of improving or increasing employment opportunities for the young people, and that is why the president has been very persistent in trying as much as possible to inspire more sports personalities to reduce the baggage of the people who are struggling to get job opportunities in the country among the young people.
Francis FM Mutegi, our correspondent from East Africa in Nairobi, Kenya.
Live every Saturday and Sunday from 2 to 5 p.m. Central African Time, bringing you the energy, news, and good vibes to kickstart your day. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Right, it's 7:22 Central African Time. Now, the African Committee of Experts on the Rights and Welfare of the Child, the ACERWC 46th Ordinary Session, is currently underway in Maseru in the Kingdom of Lesotho. Now, the meeting has brought together children, members of member states, representatives of AU organs, national human rights institutions, civil society organizations, and other stakeholders to reflect on critical themes, including harmful practices and violence against children, amongst others. Well, to discuss this further, we're now joined on the line by Sabrina Geho, who's the newly elected ACERWC chairperson. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, and welcome to the program.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, dear media. Good morning, dear children. I'm very honored to be with you in this morning at the same time we are celebrating the 35th anniversary of the Charter.
Sabrina, for listeners who may not be familiar with what this African Charter on the Rights and Welfare of the Child is, how different is it from other international protection frameworks?
Yes, it's very important question. At the international level, we have the Convention of Child Rights, but at the level of regional level or continental level, it's the only we have this own or we haven't another instrument. So the Charter is the only instrument that we have at this level. So this is very important. We have also other instruments related to the Charter as general observations. So that's very important to raise this question concerning that the Charter in the world is the only continental instrument.
So the Charter is in place. I guess in the end is how have children benefited from the Charter? It's good to have a document, it's good to have a Charter, but if the governments aren't implementing what's in there, then it remains just a piece of paper. Have governments across the continent, authorities across the continent, started to take it seriously?
Okay, so yes, the Charter defines, first of all, defines a child to be below the age of 18, with no exceptions, which further extends to the unequivocal prohibition of child marriage also, which remains to be a persistent challenge of our continent. So it prohibits all forms also of harmful practices that affect, as you know, physical, mental, and holistic also development of children. So the Charter explicitly prohibits the recruitment of children in conflicts and extend the protection of refugee children to internally displaced children. So it refers to the injustice faced by children living under apartheid, condemning a similar situation. It's established also communication procedures ensuring that African children and their representatives have a regional platform through which accountability of their rights is upheld. That's the question of accountability is raised in each time in our committee.
So you have a number of children at this session speaking for themselves, actually, which I think is great because sometimes, often, we speak about children and not hearing from them. What have they been telling the session?
Yes, 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 especially for this session, especially for the 35th celebration of the Charter, we have the fully participatory of children. We have their session, they manage themselves, their sessions. They open the floor, they close the floor, they give the floor to other participants, to member states, to ambassador, to representative to AU organs, to representative to UN agency, to civil society and others. So in this session specifically, we have we adopted that concept concerning a fully participatory of children. We have the participation of parliamentarian children coming from different regions, the 5 regions of Africa, and they take the floor, they give their representation, their present representation concerning the child right now.
Tell me a little bit more about the session's theme: reflect, renew, recommit. What does this actually mean in practical terms for, African children, particularly those perhaps living in rural villages or refugee camps? What does this mean when you talk about reflect, renew, recommit?
Yes, it's the theme of the 35th anniversary. So it urges us to reflect on the achievement and challenges of the past 30, 50 years. We have to know where we are, to renew also our determination to address both persistent and emergent challenges, and to recommit to fully realization the vision of Jachata for every child, so that no child will left behind on the 5 regions of Africa, on the continent also, or the continent, without leaving anyone behind. And as we mark this milestone, I urge all member states, specifically who haven't rated the charter, to do so. So state party also who have some reservation to consider withdrawing their reservations, and the states that are not reported yet to submit their report. So under reflecting, renewing, and recommitting, we want to reaffirm our collective effort and stand together to advance the rights of our children through legislative reforms, enhance investment, attention, and accountability to our children.
Sabrina, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you very, very much indeed for joining us on the program. Congratulations on your assumption of the chairpersonship of the ACERWC, and we wish you the best of luck.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Have a nice day. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That's Sabrina Gaher, who's newly elected ACERWC chairperson, which stands for the African Charter on the Rights and Welfare of the Child. It's 7:30. Here are your news headlines with Onele Nsinsi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. South Africa President Cyril Ramaphosa has appealed to those who he says have been spreading disinformation about the country to join the country's national dialogue to ventilate their issues. This comes as US President Donald Trump said South Africa would not be invited to the 2026 G20 summit. The former Nigerian President Goodluck Jonathan is calling on Guinea-Bissau's military rulers to release the results of Sunday's presidential election. Jonathan, who led an observer mission, says the power grab was a deliberate attempt to undermine democracy. And Sri Lanka has appealed for international assistance as it struggles to tackle some of the worst flooding in its recent history. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Tsinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Time now to catch you up with what's been happening in the world of sport, and the weekends are always packed with so much sport all over the world, and of course especially right here across the African continent. And to keep us up to date, we say good morning to Rachel Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you so much, Peter Ndoro. We'll start with football news. So Coach Hugo Broos, the head coach of the South African men's national football team, Bafana, is set to announce his Africa Cup of Nations squad today. So last week, the Belgian named a preliminary squad for the tournament, which is expected now to be trimmed down to at least 23 players. Broos did warn that his decision would disappoint many players given the significant growth of his selection pool over the past 24 months. Now, during that time, Bafana qualified for the AFCON as well as the 2026 FIFA World Cup. Bafana's 2025 AFCON squad will be mostly have players then from Mamelodi Sundowns as well as Orlando Pirates, as it was in the case in the previous matches when they've played in the qualifiers for the FIFA 2026 World Cup as well as the AFCON 2025 qualifiers. So that formula has worked for Broos, and it's likely to be something that he will stick to, and having the same players who did the job back in 2024 back in Cote d'Ivoire when the team finished in third position, and of course expected to be minor adjustments to the squad that we've seen playing in the qualifiers as well during the course of the last 2 years. So that announcement said to be made at 12 p.m. Central African time this afternoon. On to this now. Match day 2 of the Total Energies CAF Champions League group stage delivered strong performances from North African giants as defending champions Pyramids claimed a valuable 1-0 away win against Power Dynamos of Zambia, while Esperance de Tunis came from behind to earn a deserved 1-0 draw against Angolan side Petro de Luanda. Now, Pyramids FC maintained their flawless beginning to the campaign, securing their second victory in as many matches to move joint top of Group A with Morocco's RS Bagan both sitting on 6 points. Now, Power Dynamos meanwhile remain without a point after consecutive defeats to Bagan as well as Pyramids, while in Group D, Esperance de Tunis showed character as well as determination, overturning a second half deficit to earn a vital point away from home against Petro. Now, the Angolan side opened the scoring in the 49th minute through Taigo Rez, putting the host in control, and of course it was Esperance who managed to level matters later on in that game. At the same time, Saint Elulupopo hit back late to draw 1-1 with Al Hilal Omdurman in Lubumbashi on Sunday, a result that keeps Group C firmly poised after 2 match days of the Total Energies CAF Champions League. The draw also follows Friday's goalless draw between MC Alger as well as Mamelodi Sundowns in Algiers. Sundowns from South Africa now lead Group C on goal difference with 4 points, level with Al Hilal of Sudan. MC Alger sit in third position on 2 points, with Lupopo from the Democratic Republic of Congo at the bottom of the group with just a single point after 2 matches played. So both teams will resume continental duty in January, with Lupopo aiming to turn improved second momentum into their first group win, and Al Hilal meanwhile will be looking to maintain the unbeaten run so far in the CAF Champions League group stages. On to some athletics news now. Nedbank running club manager Nick Bester says he expected Kenyan star Margaret Chipchumba to claim the women's title at this year's Soweto Marathon. Now, Chipchumba delivered storming home in 2 hours, 34 minutes and 33 seconds on Saturday to secure the $14,000 winner's check. A victory ended Yvette Van Zyl's era of dominance in the people's race. Van Zyl had won 4 times in 6 starts start. Now, Best explained that the team strategy was built around Chipchumba's success. He believed the club's biggest payday would come from the women's race and not the men's race. Onalena Konkobe was tipped to be favourite in the men's race. He failed to defend his title, only finishing in third position.
Okay, I can tell you honestly, we believed in our men. Our money was on Alene and a host of other top Nedbank athletes, but my main aim was to win the ladies division in the Soweto Marathon today. That's why you didn't see me at the end. I was on course, seconding especially the ladies, make sure they get enough nutrition. Because in the past, they were neglected and you were running out of energy. And I'm glad that it was planned. And after 3:11 city to city, I knew that Margaret was in shape.
On to Formula One news now. Max Verstappen claimed a crucial victory in the Qatar Grand Prix from Oscar Piastri, with the title bet now set to go down to the final round, as championship leader Lando Norris could only finish fourth. Now, Verstappen's unlikely win was courtesy of McLaren's alternative strategy, which came as a consequence of an early safety car intervention and an enforced 25-lap maximum stint length on the Pirelli tyre sets. Now, the Red Bull driver jumped Norris on the run to his first turn from position 3 on the grid and also shadowed Pullman, that is Piastri, in the opening laps before a clash between Nico Hülkenberg as well as Pierre Gasly at turn 1. Several laps later turned the race on its head. So while all drivers pitted for the first time of 2 mandatory pit stops in the 57-lap race, both Piastri as well as Norris remained out on the track, which ultimately put them behind Verstappen in the final order. Let's hear from Max Verstappen.
Yeah, this was an incredible race for us. We made the right call there as a team to box under that safety car, and that was smart. And of course, super happy to win here. We stay, of course, in the fight till the end. Incredible. But
Well, that concludes your sports news this hour. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, our email address is newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Call us as well on +27 11714 4459. I'm back with a final sports update on Africa Rise and Shine in the next hour. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Channel Africa and you have got something in common. The thirst for knowledge. Got something to say? Are you passionate about issues that matter? Do you have a voice that deserves to be heard? Well, we've got the perfect platform for you. Call in or drop us a WhatsApp on +27 63 406 9126. And we will call you back so you could have your say and be part of the conversation.
30 years of age. I just turned 30 on the 15th of November. So that's who I am,
It's not just talk. It's your chance to air your views. Share your opinion. Engage with a community that values your perspective. Follow us on our social media. Visit our website at www.channelafrica.co.za and get ready to share your views on Channel Africa, the African Perspective. This World AIDS Day will rise above disruption, transforming the AIDS response for every African community on Channel Africa.
Okay, let's see what's happening in the world of business as we say good morning once again to Matapelo Mahape.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter, and good morning. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa has lauded the work done by municipalities in preparing for the G20 summit in Johannesburg, which culminated in the leaders' meeting more than a week ago. This was part of the live address by Ramaphosa last night. He thanked all South Africans for the hospitality they extended to the thousands of foreign delegates. The G20 summit saw more than 130 meetings held in every part of the country as well as on the African continent over the past year of the country's presidency of the economic bloc. The president says citizens had shown the world the strength of South African values, their generosity and the power of working together.
We thank our mayors, our councillors and municipal workers who worked so hard to prepare our host cities and towns for the arrival of our visitors, particularly in Johannesburg, which hosted the Leaders Summit. These cities and towns showed what can be done when a concerted and coordinated effort is made to fix potholes and street lights, to clean up our streets and maintain our infrastructure. This must continue past the G20 and must be expanded to areas of our towns and cities that have been neglected. This is the time to improve service delivery.
Ramaphosa added that the government will continue to improve infrastructure in the country after intense efforts to address the problems, including repairing potholes in Johannesburg ahead of the G20 summit. He has highlighted the importance of working together, saying it has led to the economy showing signs of recovery.
It is therefore essential that we work together so that we can attract investment, promote inclusive growth, and create jobs. Through the work we are doing together, we are beginning to see the green shoots of an emerging economic recovery. Unemployment is falling and has been recorded as such in recent months. Our public finances are improving, allowing us to steadily reduce our national debt. We have recently seen a sovereign credit rating upgrade.
And Senegalese authorities are working to prevent an oil spill after the Panamanian oil tanker Mersin, owned by Turkey's Mersin Shipping Incorporated, reported water entering its engine room near Dakar. The incident, which occurred overnight between the 27th and the 28th of November, prompted the deployment of tugboats and specialized teams with all crew members rescued safely. Measures are being taken to stabilize the vessel and prevent hydrocarbon leaks, including transferring the fuel cargo and deploying an anti-pollution boom. Images indicate the vessel may be at risk of flooding. And 4 employees of Barrick Mining in Mali have been released after a year of detention amid a dispute over the country's mining code. The conflict revolved around Mali's increased share of gold revenues due to a surge in gold prices. Barrick announced an agreement with the Mali government to resolve all disputes related to the Lulo-Guankoto mining complex, which included the release of the detained employees. They had been imprisoned since November of 2024. And South Korea's biggest online retailer, Coupang, has apologized for the breach of personal information from 33.7 million customers' accounts through unauthorized data access. CEO Park Dae-jung expressed regret for the inconvenience caused. Following the breach, which was discovered on the 18th of November, the government is investigating potential violations of personal information protection regulation, and the company is said to be cooperating with law enforcement and regulatory bodies. A look at your financial indicators. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 447. In Botswana, it's 14 pula 14. Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shillings 73, and in Zambia, it's at 22 kwacha 86. The BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 real 33. Russia is at 77 rubles 43. India, it's 89 rupees at 34, while in China, it's 7 yuan 6, and in South Africa, $1 is trading at 17 rands at 10 cents. $1 is trading at 75 pence to the British pound and 86 to the euro. A look at your commodities. Gold is trading at $4,241 and platinum at $1,695 per ounce, while the price of Brent crude oil is at $63.32 a barrel. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business News, I am Matapela Mahabe.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
The government of the Kingdom of Eswatini has rubbished reports that its own Eswatini-flagged vessel that has been seized in Iran. A Revolutionary Guards Navy commander announced on Sunday that the Iranian authorities had intercepted a vessel carrying 350,000 litres of smuggled fuel. In response, the Kingdom of Eswatini has reiterated that it has no operational ship registry, nor has it appointed, mandated, or authorized any individual company or foreign agent to register vessels on its behalf. Well, for more on this, we're now joined on the line by the Times of Eswatini news editor, Mbongeseni Nzimanze. Thank you so much for joining us and welcome to the program.
No, thank you.
So denials. What's your take on what's happened in Iran? Is this an Eswatini ship or not?
No, I think as per the reports, I think it's not true. I mean, it's not true. It's unfounded because you'll know that we don't. I think this reports are appearing for the second time. I think we had one whereby it was alleged that there are about 277 vessels allegedly belonging to Eswatini that have been found in different countries. So I think government having to clarify that we don't own one. I think even our investigation found that we don't have any vessel that is being owned by the country.
Okay, so it may be that the government doesn't own these vehicles, but I mean, there's this ship. Could it be Eswatini citizens that are involved?
I think this is one of the things. I think if you read the statement there, that's what government is saying, that there should be proper investigation there, such that they've maybe asked some international bodies to assist to determine who are the people behind this, because they solely believe these are criminals who are trying to use Eswatini name. So I think the investigations will tell who really is behind this, because even the government wants to know who's behind this. Because I think if you cannot, as I previously said, that this is appearing for the second time now, and for the second time that there are reports to the effects that there are maybe vessels bearing the sorts of flag that are being seen all over the world.
Do we have any details at all about the people involved, the ship, its name, anything at all regarding this particular ship?
I think, say for the reports that were circulating, I think that were reported by the other publications, I think the investigation will reveal who's behind this, because we are told that it was transporting fuel, I think illegal smuggled fuel, and so forth and so on. But I think the investigation, which maybe the authorities of this country have initiated through maybe the relevant international bodies, will determine what was the motive behind all these. But in the interim, what we know is the reports that are being circulated pertaining that particular ship in Iran.
Eswatini is landlocked. I mean, does it even have ships?
Yes. Pardon, your question?
I'm saying Eswatini is landlocked. Does it even have ships?
We don't have any. As per the government statement, we don't have any that we have. Hence, I think if you read the statement that was issued by the government, that we need to, there's absolutely nothing. We don't have a ship registry in the country, so you cannot then say there's a vessel that is in Iran that is being owned by the country. Hence, I think if you can go through the statement, you can note that I think we solely believe, or the government solely believe, that these are criminals who are trying to drag the country's name into the mud. So I think the investigation will determine who exactly is behind this. Because if you note, it is happening for the second time. So I think this is a bigger problem which needs to be sorted quickly with the intervention of the relevant bodies and Interpol to determine who's behind this. As you rightly asked, maybe there's suspicion that maybe a citizen, there's a citizen who's behind all this, then that will be determined by the investigation.
Mbongeseni, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much indeed for that update. Very strange story indeed, but one I'm sure the truth will come out. Thanks so much for your time.
You're welcome, sir. Thank you very much.
All right, so that's the news editor of Eswatini Times, Mbongeseni Nzimanze, speaking to us about this ship, allegedly Eswatini flagged, but the Eswatini government is denying this, saying that, look, we don't have ships. We have no ships registry. And this is a landlocked country, so it could be that some citizens from Eswatini may be involved, but a full investigation is certainly underway.
Africa, meet Abedi.
Yeah, that's me.
Abedi is a music lover through and through.
I really love African music.
He's got a taste for all kinds of tunes and spends his days listening to Channel Africa. Guess what? He didn't know.
Okay.
Channel Africa wants to help Abedi and all music lovers everywhere to discover even more incredible music. That is why Channel Africa is calling on all African musicians to submit their music. Musicians, remember to give us all your relevant information. Make your submissions at music@channelafrica.co.za. Submissions are your chance to be heard on radio. But sadly, they do not guarantee that you will be playlisted. All submissions will be carefully reviewed to see if they meet our station's requirement. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Download the SABC app and take Channel Africa with you everywhere you go. This World AIDS Day, we rise above disruption, transforming the AIDS response for every African community on Channel Africa.
Right, it's 7:52 Central African time. Let's continue with our focus on World AIDS Day today. The global health agencies are warning that cuts to HIV funding and shrinking community programs are undermining progress in the fight against HIV and AIDS. Now, this year's theme, Overcoming Disruption, Transforming the AIDS Response, highlights growing pressure on HIV services, particularly across Southern Africa. And according to Kilford Zimondi, who's the country director for Humana People to People South Africa, and the country's community-driven model continues to show strong results, whilst countries like Zambia risks losing prevention gains as resources are in decline. Zimondi joins us now for further discussion. Thank you very much indeed, Kilford, for joining us, and welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me.
What's your take on this year's key message on World AIDS Day's theme? This about overcoming disruption and transforming the AIDS response. What does that mean to you?
Yeah, this to me means we have to look for new opportunities, new possibilities. We have to build on the experiences that we have gained over the years. We have to build on the resilience that has been there throughout, the decades that the communities have been fighting against the epidemic. I think the story that we have seen in Southern Africa and the story that the Humana People to People movement has been part of is a story that says the communities again will be able to raise against this whole situation and win. Because if you look way back, once upon a time, it was as if we can never gain epidemic control. But the community mobilization that Humana People to People and many others, the support that we got from the international community, the support that we got from government in terms of policies and so on, the whole process of working together, the result is that now we are talking about epidemic control in 2030. And it's clear that there have been a lot of investment and a lot of possibilities to build on and to be able to adapt to these disruptions.
What has been the real impact so far? Because the funding cuts happened quite early in the year. So we've had nearly a year now, I suppose, to take stock and assess what impact this disruption has had. From your viewpoint, what has been the impact on fighting HIV and AIDS as a result of these disruptions?
Yeah, the impact is that the communities have been able to find new solutions, to find new ways of doing things. You might be aware, as Humana People to People, we work with a program that we call Total Control of the Epidemic. It is a program that positions itself in the middle of the community, to work with the people, to sit around the table or under the tree, identify what are the challenges that we are facing currently and what are the possible solutions that we can be part of. So, for example, in South Africa, Humana People to People and many other organizations, we are part of a campaign driven by the Department of Health called the 1.1 million campaign, which is trying to get 1.1 million people who know their status but who are not on treatment. And we together with many others in the communities, we are finding ways to handle that situation. What are the challenges? People might have problems with transport money to go and collect their medication. So how do you find alternatives? You establish support groups so that then instead of 10 people going to a facility to get medication, then one goes and sends. Facilities are also, those who can, we have proven that they are able to take medication, are also given supply for a much longer period. So there are a lot of solutions that the community and of course under the leadership of the government are able to find, so that they can be able to adapt to this situation.
And perhaps finally, as someone who's literally on the front line, what's your message on this World AIDS Day?
Yeah, my message to the World AIDS Day today is this: that we have come a long way in the fight against HIV and AIDS, and we have gained a lot against the epidemic, to that extent that now we can talk about epidemic control by 2030. And it is to build on this, the experiences that we have gained. And of course, it is to continue to put the people first. The theme for the TCE program is only the people can liberate themselves from the epidemic. It means it is the people who have to be first. It is the people who have to be at the center. It is the people who have to come up with the bulk of the solutions. And all of us, we can be there to support. And I think that's also the core in this situation, that we continue to have the people in the middle, and the rest, we can come in and provide the essential support services.
Kilford, thank you very, very much indeed for joining us on the program today. And we wish you strength as you continue to do the good work that you do with Humana People to People South Africa.
Thank you so much for having me.
That was Kilford Zimondi, who's the country director for Humana People to People South Africa, speaking to us on this very important day, World AIDS Day.
From Africa's broadcast capital to the furthest corners of the globe, this is Rise and Shine, every weekday mornings on Channel Africa.
Eight o'clock Central African time. My goodness, is it the last hour of the show? Time flies when you're having fun. Thank you so much indeed for joining us. My name is Peter Ndoro, and we're broadcasting Rise and Shine on Channel Africa, live from our studios in Johannesburg. And remember, this is where we give you the African perspective on the issues across the continent and beyond, dare I say. Thanks for tuning in. We're on www.channelafrica.co.za, and so you can stream us live from wherever you may be around the world. And also, you can catch us on your mobile apps. Go into your app store, look for SABC Plus, that's SABC Plus, and then look for Channel Africa, and we'll keep you up to date with current affairs, news, and also entertainment 24 hours a day. If you want to know what's going on the continent, this is definitely the place to start. So what's coming up in this hour? The UN General Assembly is to vote on a resolution demanding the immediate return of Ukrainian children that were allegedly taken by Russia. And NGOs announce a campaign to bring together young women in law, senior justice leaders, and feminist advocates with models for building inclusive and equitable justice systems. So those are just some of the things that we'll be unpacking this hour. So stay with us for that. But first, let's catch you up with the news. Here's Onele Nsinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has appealed to those who he says have been spreading disinformation about the country to join the national dialogue to ventilate the issues. Ramaphosa was speaking in a live address to the nation. This comes as U.S. President Donald Trump said South Africa would not be invited to the 2026 G20 summit in the U.S. because of the widely discredited claim that there was a genocide against the Afrikaners in South Africa and that there was a program of land seizures against white people. Ramaphosa has invited those in the country who are spreading such disinformation to bring their concerns to the national dialogue.
South African problems must be solved by South Africans themselves. We have now embarked upon a national dialogue where all South Africans from all walks of life, of all races and creeds, are invited to forge a new future for our country. We also invite those who are spreading misinformation about our country to bring their concerns and their solutions to the national dialogue. We must never allow others to try to redefine our country and cause divisions amongst us or dictate who we are as a nation.
South Africa's former president, Jacob Zuma, will this morning launch an appeal against the judgment of the High Court in Johannesburg that's ordering him to repay the $1.6 million in state-funded legal fees. The special motion will be heard virtually. The application puts the presidency, the state attorney, and the solicitor general against Zuma, with the Democratic Alliance and the Economic Freedom Fighters as interested parties. Zuma's appeal follows a judgment that found that he was not entitled to taxpayers-funded legal support and ordered repayment with interest. The former Nigerian President Goodluck Jonathan is calling on Guinea-Bissau's military rulers to release the results of Sunday's presidential election. Jonathan, who led an observer mission, says the power grab was a deliberate attempt to undermine democracy, describing it as a ceremonial coup. He has questioned why the electoral process was suspended a day before the final results were due. South Africa's Deputy President Paul Mashatile will today lead World AIDS Day national commemorations at the Masemola Stadium in the Limpopo province in Sekhukhune district. The aim of the commemoration is to raise awareness, show solidarity with people living with HIV, and to remember those who have died. The theme of the national event for 2025 is renewed efforts and sustainable commitment to end AIDS. It emphasizes revitalizing strategies, closing gaps in prevention and treatment, and securing long-term investment to end HIV/AIDS as a public health threat by the year 2030. And lastly, Sri Lanka has appealed for international assistance as it struggles to tackle some of the worst flooding in recent history. President Anura Kumara Dissanayake says they are facing highly challenging rescue and reconstruction operations. More than 330 people are known to have been killed. The BBC's Anbarasan Etirajan.
The intensity of the rain was so much, and they had not seen this kind of rain and flooding for several years. And also the speed. One of the residents near the Kalani River in the capital, Colombo, was saying people were warning about river is rising. Okay, by the time we gathered our stuff, we rushed out. The water level rose so rapidly, we didn't even have a chance to even take our pets or other items. So that was what is surprising, the speed with which the water level was increasing.
For any news stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us at +27 11 0714-4459. Channel Africa News. I'm Onele Tsinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour is a big day today as Hugo Broos, the coach of the South African men's national football team, is set to name his 23-man squad to the upcoming AFCON tournament, while foreign runners dominate the Soweto Marathon this past weekend. More details at 8:30.
Africa in Business on Channel Africa.
The United States was very vocal at the beginning of South Africa's G20 presidency, and this is largely due to strained relations with South Africa at the time, that they were not really keen on participating. Where do they stand right now?
The US is planning to take over the presidency of the G20 next year, and our understanding from them is that they intend to continue to do so, and therefore it is quite difficult then to be in a situation where you are not attending deputies' meetings or discussions during our presidency and then to take over the presidency next year. From a finance track perspective, there has been engagement. We've been working on a communique last week and this week here in Zimbabwe. What's important about that is that it's a consensus document. And so all the members in the room have to agree to the language that is used there. And our US colleagues have been part of those discussions and negotiations.
Bringing the African markets into your home. Channel Africa, the African Perspective. Bringing you the energy, news, and good vibes to kickstart your day. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Right, let's take a look at this story now. And it takes us to the issue with, the story with Ukraine, actually. And you know that this conflict has been going on for some time now. The war between, I was about to say Israel, between Russia and Ukraine. The UN General Assembly is set to vote on a resolution demanding the immediate return of Ukrainian children allegedly taken to Russia. Today, the Ukrainian Association of South Africa is urging President Cyril Ramaphosa to support it, underscoring who is responsible, what is at stake, and why South Africa's vote matters, and how children's rights are on the line. And this call comes after South Africa signaled readiness in November 2024 to help mediate their return. After 400 names of missing Ukrainian children were handed to President Ramaphosa during President Zelensky's April 2025 visit, as human rights groups warn that childhood has an expiry date and that the world cannot look away. Well, to share a little bit more about this, we're now joined by Zimka Kashur, who's a co-founder of the NPO Ukrainian Association of South Africa, and also serves as the Vice President of the Ukrainian World Congress for the African continent, and is also a fellow researcher at the Center for Sustainability Transition at the University of Stellenbosch. Thank you so much indeed for joining us, and welcome to the program.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Take us through how we got to this point initially. Give us a bit of a history of the story of how these children were taken, under what guise, and where they are now.
Thank you. So actually it started already in 2014 when Russian invasion started initially at the Crimean Peninsula and then in the east part of Ukraine. Russia has started taking Ukrainian children and changing the citizenship and fast-tracking the adoption into Russian families. And changing citizenship without consent is a crime according to international law as well as many national legislation. However, the scale of the situation significantly changed in 2022 when Russia started the full-scale invasion, and we can see that currently we're talking about 19,500 of documented cases where children were forcibly deported. And the estimated numbers are 200,000 of children. However, Russia declared that they have 700,000 Ukrainian children. And the challenge with this definitely this crime has already been acknowledged in the International Criminal Court when the warrant of arrest against Putin was initiated in March 2022, in 2022 specifically for the Russian president signing the decree that allows to change the citizenship, the date of birth, all the personal data of a child without parental or caregiver's consent. So currently, Russian state can change the citizenship of any Ukrainian child without any consent, and this is what's happening. So since 2022, it's been a known crime, and that includes a number of issues like change of identity when children are not allowed to speak their language or to show any support to their country, forced passportization, specifically providing them with Russian citizenship and denying their Ukrainian citizenship, militarization of the education, so children are trained to become soldiers, and deportation, so separation from their families or caregivers, as well as creating a number of barriers for the parents and caregivers to return their children from this forced deportation.
So what does this resolution call for then?
It has three specific issues. One, that Russia has to return all the children, but as a first step, to provide all the names of Ukrainian children that have been deported. And this is a very important step because, as I mentioned, 19,500 are documented cases, but there are many more. So we're talking about at least 10 times more children whose cases have not yet been documented. So the resolution puts responsibility on Russia to provide international community with all the names of Ukrainian children that have been taken to Russia. Secondly, it demands that Russia stops this practice of forcible transfer because it has not stopped yet. It continues, and in 2025, it still we can see more and more children that are separated and whose citizenship is changed. And the last one, which is probably the most action-oriented, is that the UN Secretary General will be coordinating this role. And we know that in some other conflicts, like for example, in the case of Syrian children, this mechanism has been affected. So it provides the UN Secretary General with this coordination role to demand those names and to ensure that this practice ends.
What has Russia's position been regarding these children? What are they saying in terms of how these children have ended up in Russia and why they're doing what they're doing?
I think it has been clear through the legislation that has been signed by President Putin, and their position has been very open in the media, and that's why it allowed for ICC warrant of arrest to come so quickly, because they are very open that they are changing the citizenship openly and allow fast tracking of adoption of Ukrainian children into Russian families. So they don't recognize Ukraine as a state and don't recognize Ukrainian identity of children. So there is a lot of those cases, unfortunately, including the case of Russian ombudsman for children's rights, who herself has taken a Ukrainian child, and she openly explains how the child wanted to be a Ukrainian, wanted to speak Ukrainian language, and how difficult it was to break the child perception and to turn into the Russian identity, and how much work she personally had to do to stop him speaking Ukrainian language and to stop seeing Ukraine as his own country. So there is no lack of evidence of what is happening to the children. We also have, a lot of thousands of documented cases how the children are separated. For example, parents are sent into the Russian prison, and then the child can be fostered into the Russian family, where they again are not allowed to speak Ukrainian language, said that their country is a wrong country and their parents are criminals and they should they don't want to be, that the parents don't want to be with the child, while in practice parents are in prison. So I think we can see that this is extremely difficult practice. This specific resolution doesn't talk about militarization; it only talks about indoctrination of children. But we understand that the resolution has many compromises to allow for any country to support it.
Talking about support, South Africa has seen itself as being neutral in terms of the conflict between Ukraine and Russia. I guess when it comes to children, a definite stance needs to be taken.
Yes, and I think South Africa has already shown multiple examples that children's rights are important, including the children's rights of Ukrainian children's rights. In 2023, President Ramaphosa, during the African Peace Mission, said into Putin's face that Ukrainian children need to return. Unfortunately, Putin disagreed, but we can see that for President Ramaphosa, this topic has been important, and even during the infamous meeting at the Oval Cabinet with Donald Trump, out of all that chaos, the topic of Ukrainian children still been raised by Ramaphosa, who mentioned that Ukrainian children need to be returned. So we really hope that South Africa will put children's rights first in this UN resolution and support it and not abstain. I want to mention that this resolution does not mention that the Russian aggression is illegal, so that is also taken out. It only includes the topic of children, so we hope that it has nothing that goes beyond the obligations that South Africa has already taken through the Convention on Children's Rights, the Geneva Convention, Rome Statute. So all those international obligations already South Africa has already committed to them. So this resolution cannot go against anything that South Africa is declaring.
What have you seen from other African countries? I know South Africa has been quite vocal, as you've said. Have you seen support as well from other African countries?
Yes, of course. We can see that different topics with regards to the Russian aggression have different support. The most support has had the resolution on territorial integrity, where not a single country voted, African country voted against this resolution. So we understand the topic of territorial integrity is critical for African continent, and we also hope that this resolution on children's rights will face a similar support, because we understand that if such a large scale crime against children is going without proper attention of international community, it sends a very dangerous message to those who abduct children in Nigeria, those who abduct children in Sudan. So it's just a very negative precedent that tells those who want to use children as a leverage that it's allowed, that you can go and use this mechanism, and international community will not be worried about this. So we really hope that many African countries, actually that none of the African countries will go against this resolution.
In what ways do you think that Russia's continued deportation of children, even in 2025, challenges the effectiveness of existing international human rights systems and conventions and enforcement thereof of some of these rules?
Yes, I think obviously the whole international system has been pretty much paralyzed. We've seen that the veto right that the 5 countries have, including Russia, the UN Security Council, pretty much paralyzes international system, and it doesn't matter that 140 countries vote, saying, including many African countries, that Russian aggression has to be stopped. Russia can stop any actions at the UN level of the UN Security Council. So more work needs to be done to curb the veto right and to have the UN Security Council more representative, including representatives of the African continent, But we believe that the children's rights cannot wait for that, because childhood has an expiry date. You know, after the age of 18, children losing their rights, children's rights, right? They become an adult. And it's very important that we act really promptly, because already since 2022, we are talking almost 4 years. If we look at, since those children who were abducted in 2014, most of them are probably already adults. So all those violations, industrialization, militarization is used against them. And children as early as age of 5 years old already put into the military clothes used for propaganda. They are photographed with machine guns just to promote this militarization. And we believe that children should have the right to remain children. So we really hope that international community will put their efforts together, and especially South Africa, to stop this practice.
Zivinka, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much indeed for joining us. And let's hope that the world does right by the Ukrainian children. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right. Now, across the continent, Africa's children continue to face some of the most urgent human rights challenges, from child labor to informal mining to exploitation in supply chains, toxic pollutions, and lack of access to basic health and education services. Yet, during the current 46th Ordinary Session of the African Committee of Experts on Rights and Welfare on the Child, new data is being revealed that very few African governments have actually integrated child's rights into their national plans on business and human rights, despite growing corporate involvement in sectors affecting children's rights. Well, to help us unpack this, I spoke to Dr. Musa Kika, who's the Executive Director of the Institute for Human Rights and Development in Africa, to talk about some of these issues. And I began by asking him what have been the highlights so far at the current 46th session of the ACERWC.
The African Committee of Experts on the Rights and Welfare of the Child is having its 46th ordinary session here in Maseru. The committee meets twice every year, and this is the 46th meeting. The committee is the continent's premium children's body, an organ of the African Union created under the African Children's Charter. And this year is particularly special in the sense that the committee is marking the 35th anniversary of the Charter. So much of the deliberations here have been to do with stock taking on where we are in achieving some of the milestones in child protection on the continent. So there is a 2-day symposium on that. We have a record number of child participants this year, which is quite remarkable because this is a committee on children's rights. We have had, before the main deliberation started, CSOs, NGOs from across the continent meeting to deliberate and put issues on the agenda of the committee. And this year we have had 6 member states of the African Union submitting reports to the committee. These are called state party reports. Every country that has ratified the charter is mandated to submit reports regularly to the committee, articulating the state of child protection in a particular country and challenges, and reporting it sort of taken a dip a bit, but this year we are seeing reporting rising up again. We also have seen the election of a new bureau just a few days ago. There's a new leadership panel that was elected for the Children's Committee. So we have a new chairperson and we have a new deputy chairperson. So Peter, those are some of the highlights here, and we are just seeing a bit of reinvigoration of some of the processes of the committee, and deliberations continue all the way to the 6th of December.
You've highlighted that only 5 African countries have national action plans, and only one, Ghana, actually properly includes child rights. What does this tell us about maybe political will in terms of protecting children? Or is it just a lack of knowledge maybe?
Yes, so just before the committee session started here, we launched a report as the Institute for Human Rights and Development in Africa, where we were looking at how countries are mainstreaming children's rights in their national action plans on business and human rights, and the outcomes are quite staggering. 5 out of 55 countries have national action plans on business and human rights. And of those, really only Ghana has made meaningful inclusion of children's rights issues. What it means is that Africa is still a long way to go in terms of protecting its children from harmful business practices. You will be aware that globally, there is no binding instrument that mandates business enterprise to act in certain ways in terms of protection of human rights. What we have is a voluntary instrument called the UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights. It's voluntary in the sense that it's not mandatory to comply with it. Governments are not necessarily required to take certain binding steps to implement it. So national action plans are a way of government capturing in a systematic way how they are going to address human rights compliance in business practice. So we have 50 countries that are yet to do these national action plans. And the reality is that we are still reeling as a continent from exploitation of our people and our natural environments in the course of business enterprise.
Government is seen perhaps as the primary caregiver in terms of protecting our children. But businesses too, I guess, shoulder some responsibility. What should our African businesses be doing better? And also, how do we hold them accountable?
Well, to start off, they are the ones that must be complying with the laws of the lands in which they are operating. You have laws around business, company laws. You have laws around labor laws. You have laws around environmental protection. You have laws around consumer protection. Yes, we might not have binding legislation around human rights and business per se in our countries, but we still have provisions scattered across various statutes. Businesses must comply with those voluntarily. They don't necessarily need the government on their backs all the time, although it's necessary. But it's important for businesses to just be ethical and recognize their legal obligations. Businesses must engage in ethical practice. They must desist from harming children in terms of how they interact with the environment, how they interact with children as consumers of services and products, but also as employees. Businesses are not supposed to be employing children in ways which are prohibited. They are supposed to take care of the environments in which they operate. Without taking care of the environments, there is no sustainability. Sustainability of the businesses themselves, but also the environments in which they are working and extracting. Businesses are supposed to meet their fair share of legal obligations in terms of paying taxes and whatever licenses that are due to the governments that they operate in. Only then are governments able to really take care of their populations and continue to regulate the very same businesses in a way that's conducive, that's enabling to those businesses. So these are just some of the ways, Peter, in addition to obligations that governments also have.
You mentioned environment a few times there, and I think beyond just children working in harmful environments, I guess the environments where children live that are close to these businesses is equally important, and that it shouldn't just be seen as an environmental issue, but a human rights, child rights issue.
So what happens is when businesses pollute or corrupt or destroy or damage environments in which they operate, they are harming children, both directly and indirectly. Children live in those environments. What we have seen across the continent, children being born with deformities because of environments which are polluted by toxins.
All right, that's Dr. Musa Kika, and we were speaking to him about the child rights session that's taking place in Maseru at the moment, and they're saying that only 5 countries have a national plan in place across the continent, which is a very stark reality and something that really needs to be addressed. And yeah, very sad to hear. Okay, it's 8:30. which means it's time for your news headlines. Here's Onele Nsinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. The President of the Democratic Republic of Congo, Felix Tshisekedi, is this week expected to travel to the United States to sign a final peace agreement with the Rwandan counterpart, Paul Kagame, that is aimed at ending the long-running conflict in the eastern Congo. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has appealed to those who he says have been spreading disinformation about the country to join the national dialogue to ventilate their issues. This comes as the US President Donald Trump said South Africa would not be invited to the 2026 G20 summit. And senior American and Ukrainian delegates have been holding talks in Florida. This as the Trump administration seeks to an end to Russia's war with Ukraine. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Nsinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Right, let's get an African perspective in terms of what's been happening in the world of sport. As we say good morning to Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you so much, Peter. A very good morning once again from the Sports Desk for the final time this morning on Rise and Shine. We'll start with some cricket news. So Rohit Sharma broke the record for the most sixes hit in men's one-day internationals as India edged South Africa by 17 runs in the opening game of their series in Ranchi. So after being asked to bat first, India posted 349 for 8, with Virat Kohli hitting a record-extending 52nd ODI century with a brilliantly paced 135 of 120 balls. He shared 136 with Rohit Sharma, who made 57 of 51 balls for the second wicket. So Rohit, who already held the record for the most sixes across formats in international cricket, now 642, hit about 3 sixes to overtake Shahid Afridi's 15-year record of 351 ODI maximums. Now South Africa slipped at 1 point to 11 for the loss of 3 wickets in reply, and at some point were 130 for 5, but Matthew Britsky's 72 of 80 balls, as well as Marco Janssen's 70 of 39 balls, gave the South Africans hope with a 97-run stand between the two players. So South Africa eventually went on to lose that game by 17 runs. Both were dismissed in the 34th over by Kuldeep Yadav, and South Africa's hopes seemed all over at 228 runs for the loss of 7 wickets. So the second game of the 3-match ODI series will take place this Wednesday. What it means now is that India lead the series 1-0. Mando Duplantis as well as Sydney McLaughlin-Lavron have been crowned World Athletes of the Year at the World Athletics Awards in Monaco. Now, Sweden's Duplantis set 4 new pole world records in 2025, the most recent at September's World Championships in Tokyo, where he became the first human to clear the 6.30 meter barrier. So this year, the 26-year-old was undefeated in 16 competitions and also won the world titles both indoors and outdoors, as well as a 5th consecutive Diamond Knee crown. McLaughlin-Lavron also went undefeated through 2025 in both the 400 as well as the 400 meter hurdle events. The American became 400-meter world champion in Tokyo when she ran 47.78 seconds, the second fastest time in history to break the 42-year world championship record. Back home now, Nedbank running club manager Nick Bester says he expected Kenyan star Margaret Chepchumba to claim the women's title at this year's Soweto Marathon. Now, the Kenyan delivered storming home in 2 hours, 34 minutes and 33 seconds to secure the $14,000 winner's check. A victory ended Yvette Van Zyl's era of dominance in the people's race. Now, Van Zyl had won 4 out of 6 races. Now, Bester explained that the team's strategy was built around Chipchumba's success. He also believed the club's biggest payday would come from the women's race and not the men's race, while Onalena Konkobe, who was the defending champion who had actually won the race in 2024 for Nedbank Running Club in the men's race, only managed to finish in 3rd position in this year's race. Let's take a listen to what Bester had to say about Margaret Chipchumba's performance.
Yeah, I expect a good performance from Margaret. She was my favourite from the Nedbank Running Club's perspective. We've got a couple of Ethiopians that I thought is going to be there, but they always do be their top 10. But I believe that Margaret would be the one from us that can do it.
At the same time, Bester also added Chipchumba's win was no surprise given her strong 2024 season, which included victory at the city-to-city 50-kilometre ultramarathon in Tshwane in South Africa's capital city, Pretoria, and she was also a runner-up at last year's Soweto Marathon. All right, we seem to not have that sound at the moment, and that concludes your sports news this hour. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, our email address is newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Alternatively, call us on +27 11714 4459. I'm back with more sports news with the On The Move team in the next hour. It is 8:36 a.m. Central African Time for Channel Africa Sport. I am Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
África. Conhece o Ntivani?
Claro que sou eu.
Ntivani é o amante da música de corpo e alma.
Eu amo música africana.
Ele aprecia todos os tipos de melodias e passa os seus dias a ouvir a Channel Africa. Okay. Adivinha só, a Channel Africa quer ajudar o Ntivani e os amantes da música em todo o lado a descobrir ainda mais música incrível. Por isso, a Channel Africa está a convocar artistas africanos a submeterem as suas músicas. Músicos, lembrem-se de nos dar todas as informações relevantes no music@channelafrica.co.za. As submissões são a vossa oportunidade de ser ouvidos, mas não garantem inclusão na lista. Todas as submissões serão cuidadosamente analisadas para verificar se cumprem os requisitos da nossa estação. Canal África, a perspectiva africana.
Right, it's time for our final business news update on Rise and Shine this morning. And with the news is Matapelo Mahape. Good morning.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter, and good morning. Starting off with the story, the government of the Kingdom of Eswatini has rubbished reports that it owns a Eswatini-flagged vessel that has been seized in Iran. A Revolutionary Guard Navy commander announced yesterday that Iranian authorities had intercepted a vessel carrying 350,000 litres of smuggled fuel. The Kingdom of Eswatini has reiterated that it has no operational ship registry, nor has it appointed, mandated or authorised any individual, company or foreign agent to register vessels on its behalf. Times of Eswatini news editor Mbongiseni Nzemanze says these reports are untrue.
No, I think as per the reports, I think it's not true. I mean, it's not true. It's unfounded because these reports are appearing for the second time. I think if you read the statement there, that's what government is saying, that there should be proper investigation there, such that they've maybe asked some intelligence bodies to assist to determine who are the people behind this, because they certainly believe these are criminals who are trying to use a Swatini name. So I think the investigations will tell who really is behind this, because even the government wants to know who's behind this. Because I think if you can note, as I previously said, that this is appearing for the second time now, and for the second time that there are reports to the effects that there are maybe vessels bearing the sorts of flag that are being seen all over the world.
And South African President Cyril Ramaphosa has thanked all the South Africans for their hospitality they extended to thousands of foreign delegates during the host of the G20 summit in Johannesburg. President Cyril Ramaphosa has lauded the work done by municipalities in preparing for the G20 summit, which culminated in the leaders' meeting more than a week ago. This was a part of the live address by Ramaphosa last night, which saw more than 130 meetings held in every part of the country as well as on the African continent over the past year of the country's presidency of the economic bloc. The president says citizens had shown the world the strength of South African values, their generosity and the power of working together.
We thank our mayors, our councillors and municipal workers who worked so hard to prepare our host cities and towns for the arrival of our visitors, particularly in Johannesburg, which hosted the Leaders' Summit. These cities and towns showed what can be done when a concerted and coordinated effort is made to fix potholes and street lights, to clean up our streets and maintain our infrastructure. This must continue past the G20 and must be expanded to areas of our towns and cities that have been neglected. This is the time to improve service delivery.
Ramaphosa added that the government will continue to improve infrastructure in the country after intensive efforts to address problems including repairing potholes in Johannesburg ahead of the G20 summit. He has highlighted the importance of working together, saying it has led to the economy showing signs of recovery.
It is therefore essential that we work together so that we can attract investment, promote inclusive growth and create jobs. Through the work we are doing together, we are beginning to see the green shoots of an emerging economic recovery. Unemployment is falling and has been recorded as such in recent months. Our public finances are improving, allowing us to steadily reduce our national debt. We have recently seen a sovereign credit rating upgrade.
And Senegalese authorities are working to prevent an oil spill after the Panamanian oil tanker Mersin reported water entering its engine room near Dakar. The incident, which occurred overnight between the 27th and the 28th of November, prompted the deployment of tugboats and specialized teams with all crew members rescued safely. Measures are being taken to stabilize the vessel and prevent hydrocarbon leaks, including transferring the fuel cargo and deploying an anti-pollution boom. Images indicate the vessel may be at risk of flooding. Onto this now. China's new home prices increased by 0.37% month-on-month in November, accelerating from 0.28% in October, according to a new survey by China Index Academy. In contrast, resale prices fell by 0.94%, deepening from a 0.84% the previous month. The secondary market's high supply and low buyer expectations are exerting a downward pressure on prices. The property sector continues to struggle following a 2021 liquidity crunch due to tighter regulations, with many deployers defaulting on debt. Stabilizing the market could enhance household consumption and reduce reliance on infrastructure investment and exports, which have suffered from U.S. trade policies. Although authorities have introduced measures since the second half of 2024 to support the sector, significant new stimulus has not been provided this year. A look at your financial indicators. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 447. In Botswana, it's 14 pula 14. Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shillings 73. And in Zambia, it's 22 kwacha 86. The look at your BRICS countries. $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 real 33. Russia, it's at 77 rubles of 43. India, it's 18 rupees 34, while China it's 7 yuan 6, and in South Africa $1 is trading at 17 rands 10 cents. $1 is trading at 75 pence to the British pound and 86 to the euro. A look at your commodities. Gold is trading at $4,216 and platinum at $1,675 per ounce, while the price of Brent crude oil is at $63.43 a barrel. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business News, I am Matabelo Mahape.
business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Now, across Africa, a powerful new initiative is bringing generations of women together to shape a fairer future for justice and leadership. NALFM, through the Difference She Makes campaign, has launched the Africa Intergenerational Dialogues, and this is a series conveying young women in law, senior judicial figures, and feminists advocates to amplify women's leadership as a model for inclusive and equitable justice systems. Now, these dialogues will help co-create the Africa Feminist Statement, which is a blueprint ahead of the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women, CSW 70, which is aimed at embedding feminist approaches to justice across Africa. From Abuja to Buea, South Africa, Sudan, and culminating in a Pan-African dialogue on the 12th of December, the series begins today in Nigeria. And to tell us a little bit more about this, we're now joined by the founder and the president of NALFM, Aya Chebi. Aya, thank you very much indeed for joining us, and welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Aya, for those who may not be very familiar with what exactly are Africa's intergenerational dialogues and what makes them unique, please tell us.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, we were talking about the CSW 70. So every year in March, member states of the United Nations meet at the Commission of the Status of Women. They negotiate global commitments on women's rights. And next year, the theme will be focused on access to justice for all women and girls. As NALFM, every year we convene these intergenerational conversations around the CSW theme to make sure that young African voices are central to the Africa position. So, like you mentioned, the next 2 weeks, in collaboration with Different She Makes, we will have 5 dialogues in each of the regions. So Buea in Cameroon, Abuja, Nigeria, actually starting today as we speak, and Joburg tomorrow. And then we will have online for Sudan, obviously, because of the current war. But we want to make sure that also women in conflict have a voice in justice in these conversations. And then the Pan-African dialogue will address other countries that we weren't able to do in-person dialogues in. I think the most important is that we really discuss justice from conflict perspective, from transition perspective, and from peace perspective, because across our 55 member states on the African continent, we have women really struggling in these different phases. And we hope that these recommendations will then, be taken to the negotiation table in March in New York.
Can you share some of the urgent justice and gender equality issues that will be discussed at these dialogues, both globally and specifically within the African context?
Yeah, I think each country will have its own particular discussion in its own context. So, for example, the South Africa dialogue tomorrow will discuss issues of gender-based violence, femicide, the failure of institutions to protect women and girls. How do we confront impunity? How do we rebuild trust in justice systems? In Kenya, they have the SGBV court, which is an innovation of the judiciary when Chief Justice Martha Koome took over the judiciary. We will not only discuss violence from offline perspective, but also online violence. How do we confront tech-facilitated GBV, online misogyny? Some of the conversation particular to South Africa, I think tomorrow will address transitional justice beyond post-apartheid frameworks. How does justice look like for land reparation, for economic dignity? We will spotlight women in law, but I think also it's centered around female leadership, women in decision making, why things are not moving particularly for women in justice. Is it because we don't have have women, equal representation of women in law and in judiciary system at large? And we hope that the declaration from each country will address very specific contexts, but also feed into the Pan-African position, because we have common issues, but each country also has its own particular issues.
So we hear a lot about feminist leadership and feminist justice. What do these concepts mean in real terms, particularly for women working in law and governance in Africa?
they're twofold. Women in law, they are operating in male-dominated space, right? So from top leadership at the judiciary level and the court, Supreme Court, to really working across the spectrum of justice, even in police stations. So there is the fold of representation. How many of the women actually are in decision making of these processes and can deliver justice also for women? And then on the other hand, the chain of justice is very stigmatizing for women, because even when we have progressive law, and we do on the African continent, even at the African Union level, we have very progressive laws. We have the CEDAW, we have the Maputo Protocol, we have the African Commission on Human Rights. But when you come to implementation, when you come to the chain of justice, from actually having the confidence to go and report to the police station level, at your county level or township level, to the national level, to the regional, the regional courts, the justice is not delivering for women, and especially sexual and gender-based violence. So a feminist justice is a justice that simply delivers for all women and girls, regardless of discrimination against based on race or religion or where they come from. It's delivering for all.
Aya, your own journey has inspired so many young African women. I wonder how your experience as an advocate and a former AU youth envoy influences the vision behind these dialogues.
I am a Pan-African feminist. I do believe that we need momentum for Pan-African solidarity, because we have to speak up as a continent. And I invite everyone to join the Pan-African Dialogue next week, because those are the conversation. We have to build cross-border feminist solidarity that can respond faster, share evidence, push institutions, whether national or global, to really act. And I think also this is not it's not a women issue. Everybody is affected in society. Gender-based violence is an epidemic, is a pandemic, in fact. And I know I was here at G20 last week. You were just sharing the news about that. When the president declared that gender-based violence is a national disaster, as a Pan-Africanist, I look at that and I'm like, okay, this is signals GBV is not a social issue, it's a national emergency. But what does that actually look like? In solidarity with South African women, for all these women and girls, we must translate into faster investigation, into survivor-centered courts, into protection orders that actually work, and accountability. So I've always been a feminist. I think my journey at the African Union and after is only to open more doors for young women, especially in leadership, to be in these spaces and demand accountability.
And perhaps finally, how can African women, whether in law, in business, activists or communities, how can they get involved and contribute to this movement?
I mean, NalaFem is a feminist collective, is open to all women across the 55 countries and even the diaspora. So we invite you to go to Eventbrite, see the dialogues. If it's happening in your country, join. If not, join the Pan-African one. And once you are part of any of the activities of NalaFem, then you become a member and we reach out to you for different engagements. So it is the time for us to come together as women. I think it's radical when women support women. It scares the hell of patriarchy when women are organizing feminist spaces, Pan-African spaces. So I invite everyone to join, because NalaFem is the platform for that.
Aya, it's been a great pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for giving us your time, and good luck with these dialogues.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
That's Aya Chebi, president of NalaFem. Interesting dialogues that she was speaking to us about. Talking about interesting dialogues and conversations after the 9 o'clock news. It's On the Move with Palisa and Benjamin. And Benjamin is in studio to tell us what's coming. Hello, brother Benjamin.
Hey, how you doing, man?
Yeah, did you have a good weekend?
I had a good one. Yeah, spent some time with my son. Always fun.
Bless.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, man. Kids are amazing, aren't
They're
they?
super cool, man. Yeah.
So, what are we moving on to On the Move?
Well, today we're going to be discussing something very interesting in our the African View debate, right? We're going to be talking about the fact that in modern relationships, even when couples get married or they have a long-term commitment, they say, you know what, I'll keep my space, you keep your space.
Wow.
I'll keep my hobbies, you keep your hobbies. We can still have a beautiful life together, but we don't have to live in one place.
That is fascinating. Do you know, it's a conversation I was having with a friend just now, actually, about this new coupledom.
Yes.
The new way of doing things. And it is fascinating. And I suppose it's a new way. Most of the old ways have their roots in things like culture, tradition, and religion.
Yes.
But I think younger and younger people are just breaking free of these norms. That is fascinating. What do you think of it?
I think it is nuanced, right?
Yeah.
Especially it makes sense for couples that are a little bit older. They've already established themselves. They have their own assets. They've got children, you know. But they do want to get committed to someone. But they just want to keep their things their own and keep that separation distinct. So it does make sense to a large degree. So the question we're asking in the African View debates today is that a sign of a healthy modern partnership, or does living apart undermine the very foundation of marriage?
Well, let me tell you, I think there's a cultural aspect here that will not allow.
Sure, that's what's coming up today.
All right, that's On the Move. Fascinating subject, and I urge you to listen to that. I'm fascinated by it. Okay, that's all coming up after the 9 o'clock news. Right now, though, the Springboks capped off the year with a record 73-0 defeat of Wales in Cardiff. My goodness. The Boks lost just twice in 2025, and they finish up as the number 1 ranked team in the world. And they'll be seeded first for the draw for the 2027 Rugby World Cup in Australia, which takes place on Wednesday. Now, the team is, however, sweating on the sanction that it will be meted out to Loch Eben Etzben after an eye gouge late in the match. Simon Burke has more.
A satisfying win, but it is that red card against Eben Etzebeth that will leave a bitter taste. Unlike the other red cards picked up along the way on this end-of-year tour, for an eye gouge, there can be few mitigating factors. Captain Siakolisi says players know the book will be thrown at them for this sort of infraction.
I'm sure he didn't mean to do that on purpose. There's no ways. I mean, if you go for an eye gouge, you know that what happens after that. But hopefully, he said sorry to the guy already. But I don't want that to be the highlight of the day. It's been a good day.
Coach Rassie Erasmus was also caught off guard by the actions of his most senior player.
Yeah, well, I don't know what I can say now that won't be controversial. I mean, didn't look good. I think justified the red card. I'm how it happened and why it happened, and if there was, that's the right word, provoked. I'm not sure, but that's definitely not the way we would have liked to end the game. I don't. The optics was great. Yeah.
For the Boks, it's job done as they finish as the best team in the world and now wait for the draw for the 2027 Rugby World Cup.
But this year for us, ending top of the table was pretty important. We never look at the world rankings, but this year we don't know if it will be beneficial when the draw comes out this week. We're not sure what will happen.
Erasmus also addressed concerns that this team is peaking too early for the World Cup in 2027.
If you want to cover all your bases for the World Cup, you have to get even better than we were this year. But it was a satisfying year. Trying to evolve, keep on winning, and sort of find a balance between getting experience and squad depth. I think in that regard we're okay. But it's now 7 months, and then we only play again.
The draw for the 2027 Rugby World Cup happens on Wednesday, the 3rd of December. The defending champions have done all they can to be ready. And Burke, SABC News.
From Africa's broadcast capital to the furthest corners of the globe, this is Rise and Shine, every weekday mornings on Channel Africa.
Yes, rise and shine indeed. And that's how we come to the end of today's episode. Join us again tomorrow morning after the 6 o'clock news. In the meantime, have an awesome day, everybody. And I hope Asanda will be back tomorrow as well. Next is the news with Onele Nsinsi, followed by the new sports headlines with Musubudi Makura. And then Rise and Shine is out. Bye. Have a good day.
SABC News. The African Perspective.